What do you do when the man you married, the man who promised to protect you and your child, suddenly turns into the very thing you fear most? On my first night back home with our newborn daughter, Corbin, my husband of 3 years, revealed the monster lurking behind his charm. His outbursts, his accusations, his rage, it all led to one terrible moment. And that's when I realized I had to fight for us or lose everything. Stay tuned to hear how I took back control of my life, my daughter, and my future, no longer a victim, but a survivor. And don't forget to subscribe for more empowering stories of strength and resilience. I never imagined I'd be standing between my 2-month-old daughter and her father, trying to protect her from the very person who was supposed to love and cherish us both. The sound of Corbin's heavy footsteps pacing our living room still echoes in my mind like thunder before a storm. I'm Alara, and this was the day my husband of 3 years revealed the monster inside. "Look at me when I'm talking to you!" Corbin's voice boomed through our suburban home, making the pictures on the walls tremble. I held Rin close, her tiny fingers gripping my hospital scrubs. She was so small, so unaware of how everything was about to change. "How long have you been lying to me?" he yelled, shoving his phone in my face. On the screen was a simple text from Jasper. "She's beautiful, Ilara. Rin has your eyes." My heart pounded as I tried to keep my composure. "He's your best friend, Corbin. He's just being nice about our daughter," I explained, but I could see the storm cloud growing in Corbin's eyes. "Since I got pregnant, my best friend?" He laughed, but there was nothing warm in it. "The same friend who always finds a reason to visit the pediatric ward when you're on shift?" His face was turning red, veins bulging from his neck. "Rin doesn't even look like me! Stop it!" I begged, stepping back. "You're being ridiculous! You were there when she was born! You cut the cord, Corbin!" Rin shifted in my arms, sensing the rising tension. And then it happened. Corbin snapped. His hand shot out and shoved me. Time seemed to slow as I stumbled backward. My body twisted instinctively, shielding Rin as my hip collided with the corner of our coffee table. Pain exploded through my side and we fell. Rin's frightened cry echoed through the room, a sound that pierced my heart as I hit the floor. "My baby!" I screamed, checking her over in panic. She was still safe in my arms, protected by my body, but already I felt bruises blooming across my hip. Corbin stood over us, momentarily frozen by the weight of what he had just done. "Ilara," he stammered, his voice trembling. "I didn't mean—" "Don't!" I cut him off, tears streaming down my face. "Don't you dare say you didn't mean it! You shoved me while I was holding our baby!" My voice cracked with fury and fear. What kind of father does that? I struggled to stand, pain shooting through my hip. Rin's cries softened to whimpers, her tiny face pressed against my chest, the same chest she'd fed from just an hour ago, when everything was normal, when I still believed in the man I married. Corbin reached for us, and I recoiled, my body instinctively pulling away. "Don't touch us," I warned, my voice low and dangerous. A mother's protective instinct is a powerful thing. It can transform fear into strength in an instant. "Ilara, please," he begged, his anger morphing into panic. "You know I love Rin. I need to know she's mine." His words hung in the air, thick with poison. I looked at him, really looked at him, at the man who'd once brought me flowers on late-night shifts, who'd cried tears of joy when Rin was born, who had promised to protect us. Now he stood before me, a stranger, hands still clenched into fists. "You want proof?" I spat, my body trembling with adrenaline. "Fine, we'll get a DNA test, but understand this. Corbin, the moment you pushed me and Rin, you lost us both. No test result will change that." As I limped toward the stairs, clutching Rin close, I heard Corbin sink onto the couch, his breathing ragged. My mind was already racing, planning our escape. One thing was crystal clear. This house wasn't safe anymore, not for me, and certainly not for my daughter. 3 years earlier, life was different. I loved my job in the pediatric ward at Memorial Hospital, where every day brought new challenges and tiny smiles. Children have this way of making even the hardest days worthwhile. My scrubs were often decorated with cartoon bandages from playful patients, and I wore them like badges of honor. That's where I first met Corbin. He was the new hospital administrator, all pressed suits and confident smiles. I remember the day clearly. I was checking on Tommy, a 7-year-old recovering from appendix surgery, when Corbin walked in during his department tour. "Nurse Evans," he'd said, reading my badge. "I've heard great things about your work with the kids." His smile reached his eyes back then, warm and genuine. Tommy gave him a thumbs up from his bed, and we all laughed. After that, Corbin found reasons to visit the pediatric ward regularly. He'd bring coffee during my night shifts, claiming he was just checking on department morale. Our conversations grew longer, and I found myself looking forward to his visits. He seemed to care about everything I said and remembered every detail about my patient stories. "You have such a big heart, Ilara," he'd told me during our first date at a small Italian restaurant. "The way you talk about those kids, it's beautiful." I fell for his attentiveness, his apparent kindness, his ambition. Our whirlwind romance felt like a fairy tale. Within 6 months, Corbin proposed in the hospital garden, where we first had lunch together. My colleagues were thrilled, especially Jasper, Corbin's best friend from college, who worked in hospital security. Jasper had become like a brother to me, always ready with a joke or a supportive word after tough shifts. The changes were subtle at first. Corbin suggested I switch to day shifts because he missed me at night. "I just want to spend more time with my beautiful wife," he'd say, kissing my forehead. It seemed sweet then, not controlling. Then came the questions about my male coworkers. "Who's Dr. Anderson? He seems very friendly with you." Or, "I noticed Jasper hanging around your ward again today." His tone was casual, but his eyes would darken slightly. I brushed it off as a normal concern. After all, Corbin had lost his mother young, and his father had remarried quickly. "Sometimes I get scared of losing people I love," he'd confided once, holding me close. I thought I could heal that hurt with enough love. The pregnancy test changed everything. 2 pink lines that made my heart soar and my hands tremble. I planned to surprise Corbin with the news and bought a tiny pair of baby shoes to put on his desk, but Jasper saw me hiding them in my locker. "Congratulations, Ilara," he whispered, pulling me into a quick hug. "Corbin is going to be thrilled." His genuine excitement for us made me smile, and for a brief moment, everything felt perfect. When I shared the news with Corbin that evening, his reaction was everything I had dreamed of. He spun me around in our kitchen, tears welling in his eyes. "A baby," he repeated over and over. "Our baby." For a moment, he was the man I had fallen in love with, and I felt a warmth spread through me. But as my belly grew, so did his insecurities. He installed a tracking app on my phone for safety, started showing up at the hospital unannounced to bring me lunch, and interrogated me endlessly about my conversations with Jasper or any male colleagues. "You're being too friendly," he'd say after hospital events. "People might get the wrong idea about a pregnant woman acting that way." His words felt like tiny cuts, but I told myself it was just his anxiety about becoming a father. I didn't see it then how he was isolating me, controlling me, chipping away at my confidence, and how his love had turned into possession. I was too focused on our growing baby, on building the perfect nursery, and on maintaining peace. Looking back now, the signs were as clear as an emergency room light. But love has a way of blinding you, making you accept the unacceptable until the day comes when you can't ignore it anymore. The day when the man you loved shoves you while you're holding your baby, and the illusion shatters like broken glass on a hospital floor. Those memories thunder through my mind as I stand in our bedroom, Rin still whimpering softly against my chest. The bruises on my hip are nothing compared to the pain of realizing I've been living a lie. And now I must find the strength to escape it. Not just for me, but for the tiny heart beating against mine. The first serious red flag came during my 7th month of pregnancy. I was working a shorter shift, adjusting to my growing belly, when Jasper stopped by the nurse's station with a care package from the security team. He placed the box down, filled with healthy snacks and a "World's Best Nurse" mug. Just then, Corbin walked in. His smile was tight, and I could see the unease in his eyes as he watched Jasper give me a friendly pat on the shoulder before heading back to his post. That night, the interrogation began. Why was Jasper touching you? Corbin paced the kitchen, his dinner untouched. And why didn't you tell me about the gift? I sighed, one hand resting on my swollen belly. It wasn't just from Jasper. It was from the whole security team. Don't lie to me! His fist slammed down on the counter, making me jump. I saw how he looked at you. He's always looking at you. Rin kicked inside me, responding to my sudden stress. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm for her sake. Corbin, Jasper is your best friend. He was the best man at our wedding. Why are you acting like this? His expression softened suddenly, and he knelt beside me, his hand resting on my belly. I'm sorry, baby. I see how men look at you. You're so beautiful, and I get scared. He placed his hand over mine on my belly. Especially now, with our little one coming. I couldn't bear to lose you both. I wish I had seen it then, the manipulation, how he used fear and love to keep me off balance, how each accusation was followed by tenderness, making me doubt my own judgment. The next day, he drove me to work, and the next, and the next. It's safer, he said. You shouldn't be driving in your condition. My car keys disappeared somewhere in our house, but I never found them. My phone started acting up. Notifications mysteriously turned off. I missed messages from friends until they stopped messaging altogether. Corbin had an explanation for everything. The phone company was having issues, and my friends were probably just busy with their own lives. The nursery became his new obsession. He spent hours in there arranging and rearranging furniture. Everything has to be perfect, he'd say. But now I wonder if he was checking for signs of Jasper's visits, searching for evidence of betrayal that existed only in his mind. One evening, I found him scrolling through my work schedule, comparing it with Jasper's security shifts. Red marks covered the papers where our hours overlapped. When I confronted him, he exploded. 14 shifts together last month, he shouted, throwing the papers at me. Are you going to tell me that's a coincidence? We work in the same hospital, I screamed back, pregnancy hormones finally unleashing months of suppressed frustration. What do you expect? His face changed then, became eerily calm. I expect my wife to understand my concerns. He stepped closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. I expect you to care about how this looks. How what looks? I was trembling now, backing away instinctively. Like a pregnant woman doing her job. Like a pregnant woman spending too much time with another man. He grabbed my phone from the coffee table. Let's see what you two talk about, shall we? As he scrolled through my messages, I saw our future crumbling. Every innocent conversation would be twisted. Every friendly interaction turned into evidence of betrayal. And soon, very soon, our baby would be born into this atmosphere of suspicion and control. That night, as I lay awake feeling Rin move inside me, I finally admitted to myself that something was deeply wrong. But I told myself I could fix it, that once the baby came, Corbin would see how much we loved him, that his fears would fade when he held his child. I was wrong. So terribly, dangerously wrong. Rin's birth should have been the happiest day of our lives. For a few precious hours it was. Corbin cried when he first held her, his hands trembling as he counted her tiny fingers. The nurses smiled at us, the picture-perfect family. If only they could see the storm brewing behind his tears. It started the next morning. Corbin scrutinized Rin's features like he was studying evidence. Her eyes are so dark, he muttered. My whole family has blue eyes. I reminded him that my father has brown eyes, but he just stared at Rin with growing suspicion. The first week home was a blur of sleepless nights and endless feeding sessions. Corbin took time off work, but instead of helping, he watched. He watched how I held Rin, how I fed her, how I changed her. His eyes followed every movement like a security camera. You're doing that wrong, became his favorite phrase, whether it was how I burped Rin or how I swaddled her. Nothing was ever right. I started doubting my every move, my hands shaking as I cared for my baby. Then came the photos. Corbin obsessively compared Rin's baby pictures with his own. Look at this, he'd say, pointing at old albums. I had a dimple here. Rin doesn't. Each difference became another piece of his imaginary puzzle. The breaking point came when Jasper sent that innocent congratulations text. I was nursing Rin in the nursery when Corbin stormed in, face red with rage. Why is he texting you at 2 a.m.? It's not 2 a.m., it's 2 p.m. because I posted Rin's monthly photo on social media, I whispered, trying not to disturb our half-asleep daughter. Everyone's commenting, Corbin, not just Jasper. He grabbed my phone, scrolling frantically. Everyone, let's see. Jasper liked every single photo, every single one. He commented on how she has your smile, your eyes, your nose. Rin was startled at his voice, beginning to cry. I tried to shield her, to keep her calm, but Corbin wasn't finished. 3 years, Alara. 3 years I trusted you both. Was she even conceived at home, or was it during one of your night shifts? Stop it, I hissed, tears streaming down my face. You're scaring her. You're scaring me, Guy. For a moment, something flickered in his eyes. Recognition, maybe even shame. But it vanished as quickly as it came. Pack her bag, he said coldly. We're getting a DNA test tomorrow. No, I said, finding strength in my daughter's cries. We're not doing anything tomorrow. You need help, Corbin. This isn't normal. Normal? He laughed, a hollow sound that made Rin cry harder. What's not normal is how my best friend seems more interested in my wife and baby than his own life. What's not normal is how my daughter doesn't look like me at all. As I tried to stand to put Rin in her crib, Corbin blocked the doorway. You're not going anywhere until we discuss this. Move, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. You're going to wake the neighbors. Let them wake up, he shouted. Let everyone know what kind of wife you are. That's when Rin's crying reached a fever pitch, her tiny face red with distress. I had no choice but to push past him, my maternal instincts overriding my fear. As I brushed against him, I felt his body tense, his hands curling into fists. I knew then that we were running out of time. The man I once married seemed to be slipping away, replaced by a stranger I barely recognized. The man who could once look at our daughter with love now only saw her with suspicion. After Corbin fell asleep on the couch, I sat in the silence contemplating our next steps. I knew I needed to move quickly, but I hesitated. Now, standing here, nursing fresh bruises and holding my daughter close, I realized that hesitation could have cost us everything. I had just finished feeding Rin when my phone buzzed again. Another message from Jasper. Is Corbin okay? He didn't show up for our lunch meeting today. A tight knot formed in my stomach. Corbin never missed work without notice, especially not without telling someone. Before I could respond, the front door slammed open. Corbin stood in the doorway, disheveled and wild-eyed. The smell of alcohol hit me before he even spoke. Had a nice chat with Jasper's wife today, he slurred, his words heavy with suspicion. She had no idea about any lunch meeting. His hand gripped his phone tight as he stepped closer. Because there wasn't one, was there? He was planning to meet you. Corbin, you're drunk, I said, instinctively tightening my grip on Rin. Let's talk when you're sober. I am talking now, he bellowed. His voice echoed through the room, making Rin stir and let out a frightened cry. 3 years, Alara. 3 years I've watched you flirt with him, laugh with him, and now this baby. Stop it. I cut him off, my voice trembling. You're being paranoid. Jasper is married. He's your best friend. Rin is your daughter. He laughed bitterly, a sound that chilled me to my core. My daughter? Look at her. Look at her eyes, her nose. Do you think I'm stupid? He shoved his phone in my face, showing me the screen. I've been watching your hospital schedules, all those night shifts together, all those quick coffee breaks. We work in the same building. I stepped back, my heart pounding. That's all it ever was. Liar, he screamed, throwing his phone at the wall beside us. The sound of it smashing into pieces sent a shock through the room, and Rin screamed louder. You think I don't see how he looks at you? How you look at him? And then he lunged forward. His hand shot out, grabbing my hair. Rin was wailing in my arms, and I instinctively twisted my body to protect her as he shoved us with all his strength. Time seemed to slow as we crashed into the coffee table. The pain that exploded through my hip and side was sharp, but all I cared about was Rin, who was still safely cradled against me, though her cries echoed in my ears. I looked up at Corbin, and for the first time, I saw the shock on his face as the horror replaced his rage. "Ilara," he said, his voice softening. He reached for us, but I recoiled, scrambling to my feet despite the burning pain in my hip. "Stay back!" I shouted, my voice steady with a newfound resolve. "You just assaulted your wife and child. We're leaving." "No, please," he pleaded, his voice cracking as the alcohol seemed to wear off in an instant. "Ilara, I'm sorry. I need to know. I need a DNA test. Please." My mind went numb as reality set in. The man who had sworn to protect us was now the greatest threat to our safety. Every warning sign, every red flag I had ignored crashed down on me all at once. "You want a test?" I said, my voice ice cold. "Fine. But understand this. The moment you put your hands on us, you lost everything. No test result will change that. No apology will fix this." I limped toward the stairs, each step sending pain through my body. Corbin stood frozen, his face a mask of shock and regret. But I knew better now. I'd seen behind his mask, seen the monster lurking beneath the man I thought I loved. As I packed a bag with trembling hands, Rin still crying softly against my chest, I heard Corbin pacing downstairs, muttering to himself. I knew we had minutes, maybe seconds, before his regret turned back to rage. My phone was still in my pocket, thankfully unbroken. With shaking fingers, I texted my sister. "Need help. Coming now. Don't tell anyone." Then, moving as quietly as I could, I grabbed Rin's diaper bag, some clothes, and our important documents from my hidden folder. The sound of breaking glass downstairs told me Corbin was losing control again. We had to move now. I could hear Corbin destroying things downstairs, glass shattering, furniture being thrown. Each crash made me move faster. Rin had quieted to whimpers, as if she knew we needed to be silent. My hands shook as I shoved essentials into a bag. Diapers, wipes, Rin's favorite blanket, my wallet, and the emergency cash I'd been hiding in my tampon box. "Ilara!" Corbin's voice boomed from below. "Don't you dare leave this house!" My heart raced as I heard his footsteps on the stairs. With trembling fingers, I texted my sister again. "Call the police! 911 now!" I grabbed my nursing pillow. It would have to double as a shield if needed. The bedroom door burst open. Corbin stood there, his eyes wild, a broken picture frame in his hand. Our wedding photo was shattered. "Put the bag down," he growled. "Nobody's going anywhere until we sort this out." I held Rin tighter, positioning myself near the window. Thank God, I thought. I'd memorized the domestic violence hotline number from the hospital's break room posters. "Sort what out, Corbin? How about you just assault your wife and baby? How about how you've been controlling and stalking me?" "I'm protecting my family," he shouted, taking a step forward. "Family?" I laughed bitterly. "You just threw your wife and baby into a table. That's not protection. That's abuse." Distant sirens made us both freeze. Corbin's face contorted with rage. "You called the cops? After everything I've done for you?" "No," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "But my sister did. She's been tracking this conversation since I texted her. It's over, Corbin." He lunged forward, but I was ready. I swung the nursing pillow at his face, buying precious seconds to dodge past him. I ran down the stairs as fast as I could with Rin and the bag, ignoring the stabbing pain in my hip. The front door was blocked by overturned furniture, but I remembered the garage door code. 54321. Corbin had never bothered to change it, convinced I'd never leave him. The garage door opened just as police cars pulled up, lights flashing. 2 officers rushed toward us while others entered the house. I heard Corbin shouting upstairs, but his words were drowned out by a female officer's gentle voice. "Ma'am, are you and the baby hurt?" she asked, helping us into a patrol car. "My hip," I managed, the adrenaline starting to fade. I hit the table when he pushed us. But Rin, I protected Rin. No, the next few hours passed in a blur. The hospital, photos of my bruises, Rin being checked by a pediatrician. My sister arrived with tears in her eyes, The police took my statement. Through it all, one thought kept me going. We were finally free, but as I sat in the emergency room watching Rin sleep peacefully in the hospital bassinet, I knew this was just the beginning. Corbin wouldn't let us go easily. I needed a plan, a real plan to keep us safe. I pulled out my phone and did what I should have done months ago. I called the domestic violence hotline. A gentle voice answered, "You're not alone. We're here to help." For the first time since Corbin shoved us, I let myself cry. These weren't tears of fear or pain. They were tears of relief, because finally, after all this time, I was doing what I should have done from the first red flag. I was choosing us, choosing safety, choosing freedom. The waiting room at the courthouse felt colder than any hospital I'd worked in. Rin slept against my chest in her carrier, while my sister, Briar, held my trembling hand. 3 days had passed since we'd fled our home, and now we were here to get a restraining order. "Elara Evans," the clerk called. I stood carefully, my hips still tender from the bruises. The domestic violence advocate I'd been assigned, Maria, met us at the courtroom door. "Remember," Maria whispered, "just tell the truth. The photos, the texts, the medical report, they tell the story." The judge, a woman with kind eyes and gray hair, listened as I recounted everything: the controlling behavior, the accusations, the violence. My voice broke when I described how Corbin shoved us while I was holding Rin. "Your Honor," Corbin's lawyer interrupted, "my client was merely expressing legitimate concerns about paternity." "Legitimate concerns?" The judge cut him off. "By shoving a mother holding a 2-month-old infant? Continue, Mrs. Evans." I pulled out my phone, showing the text messages where Corbin had threatened us, the missed calls, the tracking app he'd installed. Then came the photos: my bruised hip, the broken furniture, the shattered wedding picture. "And this isn't the first incident of controlling behavior?" the judge asked. "No, Your Honor." I took a deep breath. He isolated me from friends, monitored my work schedule, accused me of affairs with his best friend. I just didn't see how dangerous it was getting until he hurt us. Corbin sat across the room, dressed in his best suit, trying to appear reasonable. But I could see the tension in his clenched jaw and the way his hands gripped the table every time I spoke. The judge didn't take long to deliberate. "I'm granting a permanent restraining order," the judge announced. "Mr. Evans is to remain at least 500 feet away from Mrs. Evans and the child at all times, with no direct or indirect contact." A wave of relief washed over me, but it was fleeting. Corbin stood up, his face turning bright red with fury. "I want a DNA test," he demanded. "That's my right as a father." The judge's tone shifted to firm authority. "Mr. Evans, you'll have your test, but your violent behavior has consequences. All visits with the child, if proven to be yours, will be supervised. Is that clear?" As we left the courthouse, I saw Corbin being held back by his lawyer, his eyes locked on mine with a burning rage. The restraining order was just paper, and I knew we would need to stay vigilant. The following 2 weeks blurred together. My divorce lawyer helped me file for emergency custody, while the domestic violence shelter found me a new apartment across town. The hospital transferred me to a different unit, away from my old schedule, to protect me from further encounters with Corbin. Then came the DNA test day. I held Rin close as Corbin sat across the room with his mother, who had flown in to support him. The technician was kind and gentle, swabbing Rin's cheek, then Corbin's. "Results in 5 days," she said softly. Those 5 days felt like a lifetime. Outside the clinic, Corbin's mother tried to confront me in the parking lot, screaming about how I'd ruined her son's life. Security had to escort her away while I clutched Rin tightly, my heart racing. Finally, the results arrived. I sat in my lawyer's office with Rin in my lap, playing with her teething ring as we opened the envelope. 99.999% probability that Corbin is the father, just as you said, my lawyer confirmed, nodding. "Now, how do you want to proceed with custody?" I looked down at Rin, so innocent, so perfect. "He's dangerous," I said firmly. "I want supervised visits only, and I want it in writing that his mother is not allowed at the visits. Rin deserves peace." Our new apartment was smaller than our old house, but it felt safer. One bedroom, a tiny kitchen, and a living room with a view of a park. There was no fancy furniture, just the basics the domestic violence organization helped us get. But for the first time in months, I could breathe freely. The first thing I did was install a security system, cameras, door sensors, panic buttons, all connected to my phone. Some might call it paranoid, but they hadn't seen the look in Corbin's eyes that day. "You're doing great," Breyer said, helping me arrange Wren's crib in the corner of my bedroom. We couldn't afford a two-bedroom apartment just yet, but Wren didn't mind. She was growing so fast, smiling more each day, blissfully unaware of how our lives had been upended. My first therapy session was harder than I expected. "I'm a nurse," I told Dr. Chin, bouncing Wren on my knee. "I'm supposed to spot signs of abuse. How did I miss them in my marriage?" "Abuse doesn't start with violence," she explained gently. "It starts with love, with someone making you feel special. The control comes so gradually, you don't see it until it's too late." She was right. Each session helped me understand how Corbin had manipulated me and how his jealousy and control had masked themselves as love. Slowly, I started trusting my instincts again. The geriatric care unit became my sanctuary. My new unit was different from pediatrics, but my patients' smiles were just as rewarding. My coworkers didn't know my whole story, but they noticed how I flinched at loud noises and how I always checked behind me in the parking lot. "We've got your back," my charge nurse said one day, showing me the new security protocols they'd put in place. "No visitor passes without ID, no information is given about staff schedules, and security escorts are available 24/7. The first supervised visit with Corbin was tense. The social worker sat between us in a sterile room while Corbin held Wren. His hands were shaking. "She's gotten so big," he whispered. "Babies do that," I replied coldly. Wren started fussing after 10 minutes, reaching for me. When Corbin tried to stand up with her, the social worker stepped in. "Please stay seated, Mr. Evans." I saw the flash of anger in his eyes, the same look he'd had that terrible day. But here, surrounded by witnesses, he could only nod and hand Wren back. Months passed. Wren learned to crawl, then walk, her wobbly steps across our small living room making me cry with joy. Each milestone was a reminder that we'd made the right choice. The divorce proceedings dragged on, but I stayed firm. Full custody, supervised visits only, no contact outside the visitation center. Corbin fought it at first, but the evidence was too strong. The medical records, the police reports, the witnesses from the hospital. "You've documented everything perfectly," my lawyer said. "Many victims don't think to do that." "I'm not a victim anymore," I corrected her. "I'm a survivor." 1 year after we left, I stood in our apartment watching Wren play with her blocks. My bruises had healed, but they'd left me stronger. The frightened woman who'd clutched her nursing pillow like a shield was gone. In her place stood someone who'd learned that love shouldn't hurt, that peace isn't weakness, that safety isn't selfish. My phone buzzed with a text from my support group leader about tomorrow's meeting. On my fridge, I had the numbers for my lawyer, therapist, and the domestic violence hotline. In my bedroom, an emergency bag was packed and ready, just in case. But fear wasn't driving me anymore. It was wisdom. Today marks 2 years since we left. Wren's 3rd birthday party is small but filled with love. Just my sister, a few close friends from work, and members of my support group who have become family. She's twirling in her princess dress in our new backyard. Yes, we finally saved enough for a small house rental, a fresh start on the other side of town. The doorbell rings, and I check the security camera before opening it. Some habits stick with you. It's Jasper and his wife, Sloane, holding a wrapped present. After everything that came out in court about Corbin's accusations, Jasper kept his distance, understanding that I needed time to heal. "Hope it's okay we stopped by," Sloane says gently. Wren runs up, excited for another present to add to her pile. "Of course," I reply, and mean it. Time and therapy have helped me understand that Corbin's paranoia about Jasper wasn't about Jasper at all. It was about control. The custody arrangement has settled into a routine. Corbin sees Wren twice a month at the visitation center. He's completed anger management classes and started therapy not for me, but because the court ordered it. His mother still tries to contact me sometimes, but I've learned to block her calls. Last week at the visitation center, something changed. Corbin watched Rin coloring, her dark curls falling over her face, curls that matched his baby pictures, though he'd once used them as proof against himself. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I was wrong about everything." I didn't respond. His apology couldn't undo the past, but maybe it meant he was finally getting help. For Rin's sake, I hoped so. Back at our party, I watched Rin blow out her candles, surrounded by people who truly love her. My phone buzzed a text from my new boyfriend, Reese, a single dad I met at a domestic violence survivor support group. "Hope the party's going great. Remember, you're stronger than you know." I smile, but don't reply yet. I'm learning to take relationships slowly, to trust my instincts, and to spot red flags before they become emergencies. Reese understands. He's been through his own journey of healing. "Mommy, look!" Rin calls, her birthday cake-covered face beaming. As I clean her cheeks, I catch my reflection in the window. The woman looking back isn't the same one who ran with a bruised hip and a nursing pillow for protection. She's stronger, wiser, and more certain of herself. The restraining order is still in place, renewed every year, just in case. My emergency bag still sits in my closet. But they're not the center of my world anymore. Now I focus on Rin's laughter, my growing savings account, the promotion I earned at work, and the peaceful nights where we dance in our kitchen just because we can. "Make a wish, Mommy," Rin insists, offering me a piece of cake. I close my eyes, but I don't wish for anything. We already have everything we need: safety, peace, and the strength to keep moving forward. My story isn't over, but the worst chapters are behind us. When I tell my support group about the day I left, I can do it without shaking. When new members arrive with fresh bruises and scared eyes, I tell them with certainty that there is life after leaving. There is happiness after healing, and there is strength in survival. Rin tugs my hand, pulling me toward her new toys, and I go willingly because that's what freedom feels like. The ability to move without fear, to love without control, and to live without looking over your shoulder. The sun sets on our little backyard party, casting long shadows. But I'm not afraid of the dark anymore. Rin and I have found our light, and no one can dim it ever again. What do you do when the person you loved most turns into your worst nightmare? Ilara's journey began on what should have been a day of celebration, her first wedding anniversary. Instead, it became the breaking point in a toxic marriage that had been building up for years. After a violent outburst from Corbin, her husband, Ilara, knew that the life she thought she had was gone, but she also knew one thing. She would fight for her daughter, Rin, and for herself. The journey was grueling, filled with painful realizations, but Ilara found the strength to leave. With her sister's support, a protective restraining order, and the help of a compassionate therapist, Ilara rebuilt her life. Every step was a reclaiming of her identity, of the mother and woman she was meant to be. As Rin grew, so did Ilara's resilience. With each milestone, they forged a new path forward, one defined by peace, not fear. As time passed, Ilara began to heal, and with the support of a strong community, including her support group and new relationships built on trust, she found the strength to rebuild not just her life, but her spirit. At her daughter's 3rd birthday party, surrounded by love, laughter, and safety, Ilara realized that she had finally broken free from the chains of control. She had chosen herself, chosen her daughter, and chosen freedom. Ilara's story is one of survival, resilience, and the power of reclaiming your life. To anyone out there facing their own journey of recovery, remember, you are stronger than you know. Your safety matters, your truth matters, and you have the power to rewrite your story. What's your story? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories of strength and healing.
I found the old video while cleaning out my closet, buried under a decade of forgotten memories. The label read Science Fair and Cheer Finals 2010 in my mother's perfect handwriting. I shouldn't have pressed play. My name is Lila, and that dusty VHS tape just reminded me why I've spent the last decade trying to prove myself to a family that never bothered to look. And first place in the state science fair goes to Lila Brooks. The grainy footage showed my 16-year-old self walking toward the stage, clutching my project on revolutionary cancer detection methods. The camera shook, then suddenly panned away to my sister Ivy practicing her cheerleading routine in the back of the auditorium. "Oh, Evelyn, look at Ivy's form. She's going to crush it at finals tomorrow." My father's voice boomed from behind the camera. My moment on stage became nothing more than background noise. I paused the video, my thumb hovering over the eject button. But something made me keep watching. The next scene showed Ivy's cheerleading finals. The camera never wavered, capturing every flip, every smile, every perfectly executed move. My parents' cheers drowned out the crowd. When Ivy's team took second place, you'd think they'd won Olympic gold from my parents' reaction. "That's my girl." Dad's voice cracked with emotion. "Our little star." My own trophy sat forgotten on a table behind them, visible for just a split second before the video cut out. I was still staring at the static when my phone buzzed. A text from Mom. "Family dinner tonight. Important news about Ivy. Don't be late." Of course it was about Ivy. It was always about Ivy. I glanced at my laptop, where an email from the biotechnology firm I'd been courting sat unopened. Inside was either an acceptance or rejection for a position that could change everything. But I knew better than to mention it at dinner. They'd just changed the subject back to Ivy anyway. My neighbor, Mr. Peterson, was watering his plants when I stepped outside. He took one look at my face and set down his watering can. "Found something you wish you hadn't?" he asked, his weathered face creasing with concern. "Just some old home videos," I said, forcing a smile. "Nothing important." "Ah," he nodded, seeing right through me. "The ones where the camera always seemed to find your sister?" I stopped short. "You remember that?" "Hard to forget. Your parents filming every little thing she did while you were winning science fairs and scholarships." He shook his head. Never did seem right to me. Something in his words hit harder than the video had. Maybe because it was the first time anyone had acknowledged what I'd felt all these years. "I have to go to another family dinner," I said, jingling my car keys. "Apparently, Ivy has news." "Well," he said, picking up his watering can, "maybe it's time to give them some news of your own." I thought about the email waiting in my inbox, about the research I'd been doing that could revolutionize early cancer detection, the same concept I'd first explored in that science fair project no one had watched. "Maybe you're right," I said, straightening my shoulders. "Maybe it's time they actually saw me." As I drove toward my parents' house, the old video played in my mind. But this time, I wasn't watching my teenage self on that stage. I was watching the moment I became invisible to my own family. The thing about being invisible, though, no one sees you coming. The family dinner was exactly what I expected, a shrine to Ivy's latest triumph. I arrived just as Mom was arranging fresh-cut roses in the center of the dining table, probably meant to match Ivy's announcement. Before I could even mention checking my work email, Ivy burst through the front door. "I'm engaged." She thrust her left hand forward, a massive diamond catching the light. Jake, her boyfriend of 8 months, followed behind with that easy smile that seemed to charm everyone but me. "We're thinking June," Ivy gushed, while Mom dabbed at her eyes with a napkin. "A garden wedding, just like you always wanted for me." I took a long sip of wine, remembering the emails still waiting in my inbox. The position would mean leading my own research team, developing technology that could save thousands of lives. But timing had never been my strong suit. "Actually," I started, setting down my glass, "I have some news too." "Jake's family owns the most beautiful venue in Vermont," Mom interrupted, already pulling up photos on her phone. "Lila, you'll need to request time off work. The whole month of June, probably. You're going to be the maid of honor." Dad clapped Jake on the shoulder. "Welcome to the family, son. We always knew Ivy would land someone special." I felt my phone vibrate in my pocket, probably the biotechnology firm wondering why I hadn't responded. The position would require moving across the country. 6 months minimum, starting in June. About that, I said, louder this time. "I might not be available in June. I'm waiting to hear about a research position." "Oh, honey," Mom waved her hand dismissively. "You're not still doing that lab work, are you? You're 28. It's time to think about settling down like your sister." It's not just lab work, I said, my voice tight. It's revolutionary cancer detection technology. The same concept I developed in high school, actually. Remember that science fair? The blank looks on their faces answered that question. Well, Ivy chirped. Speaking of high school, guess who I ran into? Remember Tommy Phillips from the football team? He's single now, Lila. I could set you up. I stood up so abruptly my chair scraped against the floor. I need some air. In the backyard, I finally opened the email. Congratulations, it began. We would be honored to have you lead our research team. The back door opened, and Jake stepped out. Rough night. Shouldn't you be inside planning your perfect June wedding? He laughed, but it wasn't his usual confident sound. Can I be honest? I hate garden weddings. And Vermont. He pulled out a cigarette, hands shaking slightly as he lit it. But what Ivy wants, Ivy gets, right? Something in his tone made me look closer. The designer watch on his wrist was gone, replaced by a tan line. The same watch he'd bragged about buying last month. Everything okay, Jake? He took a long drag. Sure. Great. Perfect. Each word dripped with sarcasm. Just like everything in this family has to be perfect, right? Before I could respond, Ivy's voice rang out from inside. Jake, baby. Mom wants to show you the wedding venues. He straightened up, that familiar charming smile sliding back into place. But now I'd seen behind it. Coming, sweetheart. As he headed inside, I pulled out my phone and typed 2 words in response to the job offer. I accept. Mom appeared in the doorway. Lila, stop hiding out here. We need to discuss your dress fitting. I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw what I'd been missing. The slight tremor in her hands as she smoothed her already perfect hair. The forced brightness of her smile. The way she kept glancing at Jake's retreating back. They were all pretending. Every single one of them. Well, I was done pretending. I had a job offer in one hand and a family secret forming in the other. For the first time in my life, I felt visible because I was finally seeing them clearly too. Coming, Mom, I said, pocketing my phone. I think it's time we had a real family discussion. 3 weeks after accepting the research position, I ran into Aunt Felicity at the local bank. She was wearing her manager's badge and a concerned expression I hadn't seen since my high school graduation. Lila, she said, glancing around before pulling me into her office. We need to talk about Jake. I hadn't told anyone about my conversation with him in the backyard or about the missing watch. But Aunt Felicity had always seen what others missed. He's been coming in almost daily, she said, closing her door, making large withdrawals from Ivy's account. When I mentioned it to your mother, she changed the subject. My stomach tightened. How large? She slid a piece of paper across her desk. The number made me grip the edge of my chair. That's more than Ivy makes in a year, I said. It's more than both their salaries combined. Felicity leaned forward. And that's just from the past month. A memory flashed. Jake's shaking hands as he lit that cigarette, the missing watch, the forced smile. The pieces were falling into place, forming a picture I didn't want to see. My phone buzzed. A text from Ivy. Need to talk. Coffee? Just us sisters. I have to go, I told Felicity, standing up. But thank you for telling me. She caught my arm. Be careful, Lila. Sometimes helping means making hard choices. I found Ivy at our usual cafe, but she wasn't her typical bubbly self. Her designer purse was missing, replaced by a worn tote. Her engagement ring twisted nervously on her finger. I need to borrow some money, she blurted before I could sit down. Just until the wedding. Jake's investments. They're just taking longer to pay off than expected. Investments. I kept my voice neutral, remembering the withdrawal slip on Felicity's desk. Yes, he has the system. She trailed off, eyes darting away. It doesn't matter.
Can you help or not?
I thought about my new job, the move across the country, the chance to finally build something of my own. How much? She named a figure that would drain my savings. My future. That's everything I have, Ivy. But you're the successful one. Her voice cracked. The smart one. You always figure everything out. Do I? I leaned forward. Because from where I'm sitting, I'm just the invisible sister who's supposed to clean up everyone else's messes. Her face crumpled. You don't understand. Jake says if we can't pay them back. Then she clapped her hand over her mouth, but it was too late. My phone buzzed again. A text from an unknown number. Tell your sister time's running out. Jake knows the consequences. I showed it to Ivy. She went pale. Who are they? I asked. She shook her head, gathering her things. I shouldn't have come. Forget I asked. Ivy, wait. But she was already gone, leaving behind a crumpled receipt. I smoothed it out, a pawn shop ticket for one designer watch. That night, I sat in my car outside my parents' house, watching Jake's car pull in. He stumbled slightly getting out, checking his phone with shaking hands. Through the window, I could see Mom and Dad welcoming him, all smiles and warmth, while Ivy hovered in the background, a shadow of her former self. My own phone lit up with another message about the research position. Need your decision about the early start date. Position available immediately. I thought about Aunt Felicity's words. Sometimes helping means making hard choices. I started typing. I'll take the immediate start. Then I deleted it. Instead, I pulled on my banking app and looked at my savings, everything I'd worked for, everything I'd planned to use for my fresh start. The amount that could save Ivy, or destroy us both. My finger hovered over the transfer button as Jake's words echoed in my head. What Ivy wants, Ivy gets. But not this time. This time, I was going to find out exactly what Jake had done with my sister's money. And when I did, someone was finally going to see me coming. I put the car in drive, my mind already forming a plan. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even, it's getting answers. I followed Jake for 3 days before I caught him. Not at a casino or a bookie's den, but at the Silver Moon Motel on the edge of town, meeting with a man who looked like he collected broken kneecaps for fun. Through my car window, I watched Jake hand over an envelope, his hands trembling just like they had at the engagement dinner. The man counted the contents, then shook his head. Even from across the parking lot, I could see Jake's face crumple. My phone buzzed, another text from Mom about wedding preparations. Ivy's dress fitting tomorrow. Be there by 10. Don't be late like last time. I was about to reply when Jake's raised voice caught my attention. I'll get the rest. Just need more time. The man's response was too quiet to hear, but Jake's reaction wasn't. He stumbled backward, face white as paper. That's when I noticed someone else watching from a parked car 2 spaces down. Through the reflection in my side mirror, I caught a glimpse of Aunt Felicity, her expression grim as she typed something on her phone. My own phone buzzed again. This time it was Felicity, my office. Now. At the bank, she didn't waste time with pleasantries. Jake's in debt to loan sharks. Big ones. The kind that don't send polite payment reminders. How much? More than your sister knows. She slid a folder across her desk. But that's not the worst part. Inside were bank statements, withdrawal slips, and loan applications, all with Ivy's forged signature. He's using her name, I said, the pieces clicking into place. If he defaults, they'll come after her. Felicity's voice was steel. And your parents, since they co-signed some of these loans. My hands clenched around the folder. Does Ivy know? She suspects. But your mother. Felicity's mouth tightened. Evelyn's convinced everything's fine. Perfect family, perfect wedding, perfect lie. A text lit up my phone, Ivy. Where are you? Mom's furious you missed the fitting. Another followed immediately. Please come to dinner tonight. I need you there. I looked at the folder in my hands, then at Felicity. What happens if these loans default? Best case? Bankruptcy. Worst case? She met my eyes. People like the man at the motel start showing up at your parents' house instead. My phone buzzed again. The research facility. Position must be filled by end of week. Need your final decision. I thought about the job across the country, the escape route, the clean slate. Then I thought about Ivy's shaking hands at the cafe, Mom's forced smile at dinner, Dad's proud clap on Jake's shoulder. I have to tell them, I said. They won't believe you. Felicity's voice was gentle. Not without proof they can't ignore. Then I'll get proof. I stood up, my decision made. But I need your help. You realize what this means? She gestured at my phone, still showing the research facility's message. Your dream job. Some things matter more. I picked up the folder, even if they never see it that way. As I drove to my parents' house for dinner, I drafted a response to the research facility. I need to postpone my start date. Family emergency. Their reply came quickly. Position cannot be held. Must move forward with other candidates. I deleted the message just as I pulled into the driveway. Through the window, I could see them all gathered around the dinner table. Mom, Dad, Ivy, and Jake. The perfect family portrait. But now I saw the cracks. The way Jake's hand shook as he reached for his water glass. The slight tremble in Ivy's smile. The worried glances Mom kept shooting when she thought no one was looking. I had a choice to make. I could walk away, take the job, start fresh. Or I could stay and fight for family that might never thank me for it. I got out of the car, the folder heavy in my bag. Sometimes the hardest battles are the ones we fight for people who don't even know they need saving. Time to shatter some illusions. The realtor's sold sign looked perfect in front of my new house. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, and most importantly, 20 miles from my family. I'd just finished unloading the last box when Mom's SUV pulled into the driveway. She didn't wait for an invitation. Darling, we need to discuss something important. Dad followed behind her, and my stomach dropped when I saw Ivy and Jake trailing after them. This wasn't a casual visit. Nice place, Jake said, his eyes darting around like he was appraising everything. Real nice. Mom perched on my newly delivered couch, smoothing invisible wrinkles from her skirt. Sweetheart, we've been thinking about your situation. My situation? I stayed standing, the folder from Aunt Felicity burning a hole in my bag by the door. Living all alone in this big house, Mom continued. It seems wasteful. Dad cleared his throat. What your mother means is, with Ivy and Jake starting their life together and their current, temporary financial setback. We thought maybe you could help out family, Mom finished. Let them live here while you find something more suitable for your lifestyle. The word suitable hung in the air like poison. You want me to give them my house? My voice sounded distant, even to myself. Not give. Jake jumped in, that familiar charming smile spreading across his face. We'd pay rent, of course. Once my investments pay off. What investments? I cut him off, thinking of the man at the motel. The ones you're making with Ivy's forged signature? The room went silent. Jake's smile froze, then cracked slightly at the edges. Lila, Mom gasped. How dare you make such accusations? But I noticed Ivy hadn't said a word. She stood by the window, arms wrapped around herself, staring at the floor. Ivy, I said softly, show them your bank statements. That's enough. Dad stood up. We came here to help you, Lila. You're almost 30, alone, working those long hours in that lab. This arrangement would benefit everyone. I walked to my bag, pulled out Felicity's folder. Like these arrangements benefited everyone? Jake moved faster than I expected, snatching the folder before I could open it. This is none of your business. It became my business when you started destroying my sister's life. Destroying? Mom laughed, but it sounded hollow. They're getting married in the most beautiful venue in Vermont.
There is no venue, I said.
Is there, Jake? His face went pale. Ivy made a small sound by the window. The deposit, she whispered. You said you paid it last week. Baby, I can explain. Explain what? I pressed. The loans? The forged signatures? Or the man at the Silver Moon Motel? Jake's charm vanished. You've been following me? Someone had to protect my sister, since everyone else was too busy pretending everything was perfect. Lila Brooks. Mom stood up, shaking. You will apologize right now.
No.
The word came out stronger than I'd ever spoken to her. I'm done apologizing for seeing the truth. Then you leave us no choice, Dad said. Either you help your sister by letting them live here, or what? I challenged. Or you're no longer part of this family. The ultimatum hung in the air. I looked at each of them, Mom's rigid posture, Dad's stern face, Jake's barely concealed panic, and finally Ivy, still hugging herself by the window. I thought about the folder Jake held, the evidence that could save or destroy us all. About the years of being invisible, of having my achievements dismissed, of watching Ivy slowly disappear into Jake's web of lies. "You're right," I said quietly. "I'm not part of this family. I haven't been for a long time." I walked to the door and opened it. "Get out of my house. All of you." "Lila, please." Ivy finally spoke. "When you're ready to face the truth," I told her, "come find me. But until then, I'm done pretending." They filed out, Jake still clutching the folder. But I wasn't worried. Aunt Felicity had copies of everything. As their cars pulled away, I noticed Mr. Peterson watching from his porch next door. He raised his coffee mug in a silent salute. Sometimes standing alone is better than standing with people who want to watch you fall. 3 days after I kicked my family out, Ivy showed up at my door with a black eye and trembling hands. "He's gone crazy," she whispered. "The men he owes." They came to the house. I pulled her inside just as a dark SUV cruised past my house for the third time that hour. Ivy flinched at the sound of the engine. "Mom and Dad still won't believe me," she said, sinking onto my couch. "They think I'm being dramatic, that I provoked him." Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. "Aunt Felicity, Jake just cleared out your parents' accounts. All of them." Another text followed. "Police are involved. It's bad." I showed Ivy the messages. She didn't cry. Something worse happened. She laughed, a hollow sound that made my skin crawl. "You know what Mom said when I told her about the loans?" Ivy's voice was eerily calm. She said, "I should be more understanding. That every husband has his struggles."
My doorbell rang.
Through the peephole, I saw 2 men in suits. Not police. Their posture was all wrong. One of them was the man from the motel. "Ms. Brooks," one called out. "We need to discuss your brother-in-law's obligations." Ivy grabbed my arm, her fingers digging in. I pulled her toward the back door, but headlights swept across my kitchen windows. They had the house surrounded.
My phone buzzed again.
"Mom, how dare you fill Ivy's head with lies? Jake says you're spreading rumors at the bank. We raised you better than this." "There's something else," Ivy whispered as the men kept knocking. "Jake. He used your name too, on some of the loans." The world tilted sideways.
What?
"He found your old tax returns in Mom's office. Said since you had the best credit score." The knocking became pounding. My phone lit up with an alert from my bank. Multiple loan payments were overdue. Loans I'd never taken out. "Police are on their way," Aunt Felicity texted. "But your credit is destroyed. They're freezing your accounts." The back door rattled. Another suit-wearing man peered through the window. "Ms. Brooks." The voice from the front grew harder. "Don't make this difficult." I grabbed Ivy's hand and pulled her toward the basement door. There was a small window down there leading to the side yard. If we could just... Glass shattered upstairs. Heavy footsteps crossed my living room floor. "You know what's funny?" Ivy whispered as we crouched in the darkness. "I always thought you were the lucky one."
So smart, so independent.
I was so jealous. "We need to." "But you were right," she continued, her voice breaking. "They never saw you. Just like they never really saw me. We were just props in their perfect family picture." Footsteps on the basement stairs. A flashlight beam cut through the darkness.
My phone lit up one last time. "Dad, fix this."
"Whatever you've done to hurt Jake's reputation, fix it. Or don't bother coming home again." The flashlight found us. The man from the motel smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Ladies," he said softly, "let's discuss your family's debt." I stood up slowly, pushing Ivy behind me. Through the small basement window, I could see Mr. Peterson on his porch, phone to his ear, watching intently. Police sirens wailed in the distance. "You want to talk about debt?" I said, buying time. "Let's talk about how my family has been paying their debts for years.
Some with money.
Some with denial. Some with blind obedience." The man's smile faltered slightly. "But I'm done paying," I continued, hearing the sirens grow closer. "And I have proof of every illegal loan, Every forged signature, every threat. "You're bluffing," he said, but his eyes flickered toward the window as red and blue lights began to flash outside. I thought about the copies Aunt Felicity had safely stored away, about the years of invisible victories and silent defeats, about the price of being the perfect family's imperfect daughter. "Try me," I said, as police officers surrounded the house. "I've got nothing left to lose." Sometimes hitting rock bottom shows you exactly what you're made of. The police interview room felt smaller with each passing hour. Across the table, Detective Martinez spread out the evidence Aunt Felicity and I had gathered: loan documents, bank statements, surveillance photos from the Silver Moon Motel. "Jake Turner was arrested trying to cross the Canadian border," she said. "But he claims you're the mastermind, that you forged the signatures, orchestrated the loans." A knock at the door interrupted us. Mom and Dad burst in, their lawyer close behind. "This ends now," Dad demanded. "Our daughter is not pressing charges." I met his eyes. "Which daughter, Dad? The one with the black eye, or the one who tried to warn you?" Mom stepped forward. Her perfect makeup couldn't hide her exhaustion. "Lila, please. Think about what this will do to our family's reputation." "Your reputation?" Ivy's voice came from the doorway. She stood there, hospital discharge papers in hand, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. "That's what you're worried about." "Ivy, sweetheart," Mom started. "Don't." Ivy walked to the table, picked up one of the loan documents. "This is Jake's handwriting. He forged my signature while I was sleeping. Called it investing in our future." She laughed bitterly. "And when I finally questioned him, he gave me this." She gestured to her face. Dad's lawyer cleared his throat. "Perhaps we could discuss this privately." "No more privacy," I said, pulling out my phone. "No more perfect family lies." I played the recording from my basement, Jake's confession to the loan sharks, captured while we waited for police. Mom sank into a chair. But he was so charming. So perfect for our family. Perfect. Ivy's voice cracked. He destroyed my credit, stole my identity, and when that wasn't enough, he went after Lila's. "After everything she's done for this family," Dad protested. "What exactly have I done, Dad?" I stood up. "The sides refused to play my assigned role? The sides trying to protect Ivy when you wouldn't? We were protecting her." "No," Aunt Felicity said from the doorway. I hadn't even heard her arrive. "You were protecting your illusion of a perfect family. Just like you did when we were young, Evelyn. Always hiding the ugly truth to keep up appearances." Mom's face went white. "Felicity, don't." "Don't what?" "Tell them about how you covered up Dad's gambling? How you made me promise never to tell anyone when he lost everything. History repeats, sister. But this time, your daughters are stronger than we were." Detective Martinez cleared her throat. "Mrs. Brooks, Mr. Brooks. Given the evidence, we'll be charging Mr. Turner with multiple counts of fraud, identity theft, and domestic abuse. The question is, will you finally support your daughters, or are appearances still more important?" The silence stretched. I watched my parents' perfect facade crack, years of denial crumbling under the weight of truth. "I'll testify," Ivy said quietly. "About everything." "You'll be disinherited," Dad warned. "Good." I took Ivy's hand. "We never wanted your inheritance. We wanted parents who could see us, really see us." Mom started crying, but for once, she didn't try to hide it. "I didn't want to see," she whispered, "because seeing meant admitting I failed. Again." "You didn't fail by having imperfect children," Aunt Felicity said gently. "You failed by demanding perfection in the first place." Detective Martinez gathered the evidence. "I'll need formal statements from both MS. Brooks and MS. Turner." "It's MS. Brooks again," Ivy corrected, squeezing my hand. "And we're ready." As our parents left with their lawyer, Mom paused at the door. "Lila." Her voice was small. "That science fair project, the one about cancer detection, did you ever finish it?" "Yes," I said. "It's the basis for my research now." She nodded, tears falling freely. "I'd like to hear about it sometime, if you're willing." It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't even really an apology. But it was something we'd never had before. Truth. Sometimes the greatest revenge isn't destroying your enemies. It's forcing them to finally see reality. 6 months after Jake's arrest, I found Mom sitting on my front porch, holding a familiar VHS tape. "I've been watching our old home videos," she said as I approached. "Really watching them this time." "The science fair video." I sat beside her, leaving space between us. "Your cancer detection method," she continued. "The research company that contacted you. They're using it now, aren't they?" I nodded. "Phase 1 trials start next month." And we missed it. All of it. She turned the tape over in her hands. "We were so busy making sure everyone saw our perfect family that we stopped seeing our actual children." Down the street, Ivy emerged from Aunt Felicity's car. She'd been staying with our aunt while rebuilding her life, attending therapy, and testifying against Jake. The bruises had faded, but she walked differently now, stronger, more deliberate. "Did you know," Mom said softly, "that your father and I haven't taken a photo together since everything happened? After decades of perfectly posed holiday cards, we can't even look at cameras anymore." "Good," I said, then caught myself. No, you're right." She set the tape down. "It is good. Painful, but good." Ivy joined us on the porch, sitting on my other side. No one spoke for a moment. "Jake took a plea deal," Ivy finally said. 8 years, plus restitution. "Your father's liquidating his retirement fund to cover the loans," Mom added. "It's not much, but—"
Keep it, I said.
Aunt Felicity helped me contest the fraudulent charges. My credit's clearing up. Mine too. Ivy smiled slightly. "Though I might keep using Brooks instead of going back to Turner." About that, Mom pulled an envelope from her purse. "I found this while cleaning out the attic. It's from your grandmother, my mother." The letter inside was dated just before her death, addressed to Mom and Aunt Felicity. "I'm sorry I made you hide who you were," I read aloud. "Sorry I taught you that appearances matter more than truth. Break the cycle. Love your children for who they are, not who you wish they would be." She wrote that the day before she died. Mom whispered. I never showed it to Felicity, never took its advice. Instead, I became exactly what she warned against. Mr. Peterson waved from his porch next door. Behind him stood a man I'd seen around lately, Owen, a wildlife photographer who'd been documenting urban foxes in our neighborhood. He caught my eye and smiled. "You know," Ivy said, following my gaze, "perfect families don't exist. But real ones might be better." Mom stood up, brushing off her pants. For once, she didn't fix her hair or check her makeup. "I should go. Your father. We're trying therapy. Separately for now." She paused at the steps. "I know we can't go back. I can't fix everything we broke. But maybe we can build something new. Something real." After she left, Ivy and I sat in comfortable silence. The VHS tape sat between us, a relic of our old life. "What should we do with it?" Ivy asked. I thought about revenge, about justice, about protection, about the years spent fighting to be seen. Keep it, I decided, as a reminder of what we survived, of what we discovered. I picked up the tape, that sometimes the people who hurt us most aren't villains, they're just broken people trying to look whole. Owen crossed the street, camera in hand. "You won't believe what I just captured," he called out. "A whole fox family living right under everyone's noses." I smiled, thinking of hidden things finally coming to light. "Want to see?" he asked. Ivy nudged me.
Go.
"I've got some job applications to fill out anyway." As I walked toward Owen, I glanced back at our porch, at my sister, at the tape, at the space where Mom had sat. The perfect family was gone, shattered by truth and consequences. But maybe that's what had to happen. Maybe you can't build something real until you clear away the perfect lies. I took Owen's offer hand, ready to see what he'd discovered, ready to see what else had been hiding in plain sight, waiting to be truly seen. I never thought my own wedding dress fitting would be the moment my family finally broke me. But there I was, standing on a pedestal surrounded by mirrors, watching my mother's name flash across my phone screen like a warning sign. My name is Marlo. Marley to anyone who actually likes me, and I should have known better than to answer that call. Darling, we need to discuss your engagement party, my mother said, her voice carrying that sugary sweetness that always preceded bad news. There's been a slight development. I caught my reflection wincing as the seamstress pinned another section of ivory lace. Mom, everything's already arranged. The venue's booked, deposits are paid. Yes, well, your sister just got the most wonderful news. She's being considered for junior partner at her firm, and we simply must celebrate properly. The seamstress accidentally pricked my hip with a pin, but I barely felt it. What exactly are you saying? The 23rd would be perfect for Delilah's celebration. I've already started calling people. That's my engagement party date, I said, my voice hollow. You know that's my engagement party date. Darling, be reasonable. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for your sister. You can reschedule your little party for another weekend. The seamstress had stopped working, pretending to adjust something at the hem while obviously listening. I didn't blame her. This was probably better than her usual entertainment. Mom, Jonah's family is flying in from Seattle. We've had this plan for months. Well, they can change their flights, can't they? Delilah really needs this, sweetheart. You know how sensitive she is about her achievements. I closed my eyes, remembering all the times I'd stepped aside for Delilah's needs. My 16th birthday party, downgraded to a family dinner because Delilah had a dance recital. My college graduation celebration, shortened because Delilah was having relationship troubles and needed the family's attention. No, I said quietly. I beg your pardon? I said no. I'm not rescheduling. The silence on the other end was deafening. When my mother spoke again, her voice had lost all its sweetness. Marlo Grant, you are being incredibly selfish. Your sister has had every other moment of my life. She can't have this one. I cannot believe you're being so difficult about this. After everything we've done for you. Everything you've done for me? I laughed, and it sounded slightly unhinged even to my own ears. Name one thing, Mom. One thing you've done for me that didn't somehow end up being about Delilah. I will not stand here and be attacked by my own daughter. When you've calmed down and are ready to be reasonable, you can call me back. The line went dead. I stood there, still in my half-pinned wedding dress, feeling like I was 13 again, small, insignificant, and always wrong. Do you need a minute, honey? The seamstress asked gently. Before I could answer, the fitting room door opened and Jonah walked in, his eyes immediately finding mine in the mirror. One look at my face, and he knew something was wrong. Marley, what happened? I opened my mouth to tell him it was nothing, that I was fine, but what came out instead was a sob. He was across the room in 3 strides, careful not to step on the dress as he took my hand. Your mom? He asked quietly. I nodded, tears falling freely now. She wants me to cancel our engagement party. For Delilah. Again. His jaw tightened, but his thumb kept drawing gentle circles on my palm. What do you want to do? And that was the difference, wasn't it? In all the years of giving way to Delilah's needs, no one had ever asked what I wanted. But Jonah always did. I squeezed his hand, looking at our reflection in the mirror. Me in my wedding dress, him in his worn jeans and favorite blue sweater. Both of us a little battle-worn, but standing together. I want to have our engagement party, I said firmly. And I want to stop letting them make me feel guilty for existing. He smiled, but his eyes were serious. Then that's what we'll do. Together. I nodded, already knowing this wasn't over. My phone buzzed again, probably my mother rallying reinforcements. But for the first time in my life, I didn't feel the need to answer. The Sunday family dinner tradition felt like walking into a minefield. 3 days had passed since my mother's phone call, and now I sat at my parents' dining table, watching Delilah beam as she detailed her potential promotion to an attentive audience. Of course, nothing's official yet, she said, batting her eyes modestly. But Richard, that's the senior partner. He practically guaranteed it. That's wonderful, sweetheart, my mother cooed, reaching across to squeeze Delilah's hand. "We'll make sure your celebration is absolutely perfect." I stabbed at my roast beef, pretending not to notice my father's uncomfortable glance in my direction. Jonah's hand found my knee under the table, a silent reminder that I wasn't alone. "Actually," Delilah continued, "I was thinking we could do it at the Grove. You know, that new venue downtown." My fork clattered against the plate. The Grove was our venue, the one Jonah and I had spent months researching and finally booked for our engagement party. "That's already booked," I said quietly. My mother's smile tightened. "Well, I'm sure they can accommodate both events. It's such a lovely space." "Both events?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You mean the engagement party you're trying to cancel?" "Marlo," my father warned, using his rarely deployed stern voice. "Let's not do this now." "Do what, Dad? Point out how ridiculous this is? Delilah doesn't even have the promotion yet." "You're just jealous," Delilah snapped, her practiced poise cracking. "You can't stand that something good is happening to me. Something good is always happening to you. The world revolves around your needs, your wants, your everything." "Girls," my mother interjected sharply, "this behavior is completely inappropriate." "You know what's inappropriate?" I pushed back from the table, my chair scraping loudly against the hardwood floor. "The fact that you're trying to hijack my engagement party for a maybe promotion that Delilah might get. The fact that you've spent my entire life making me feel like I matter less than her." "That's not true," my father protested weakly. "Really? Remember my college graduation? The one you cut short because Delilah was having boy troubles? Or my sweet 16 that turned into her dance recital dinner?" "Those were different circumstances," my mother said dismissively. "You're being dramatic." "I'm being dramatic? You're the one who—" "Enough." My father's fist hit the table, making the water glasses jump. "Marlo, if you can't be supportive of your sister's success, perhaps you should leave." The silence that followed was deafening. Jonah stood up beside me, his chair making the same harsh sound against the floor. "Thank you for dinner," he said, his voice cold and formal. "We'll be going now." As we walked to the door, I heard my mother's voice behind us. "This is exactly why we're concerned about your engagement, dear. This sort of selfish behavior doesn't bode well for marriage." I froze, my hand on the doorknob. "What did you just say?" "Your mother's right," Delilah chimed in, her voice dripping with false concern. "If you can't even be happy for your own sister, how can you possibly be ready for marriage?" I turned slowly, meeting my mother's gaze. "The engagement party is happening on the 23rd. At the Grove. With or without you." "If you do this," my mother said, her voice low and threatening, "there will be consequences." "There already have been," I replied. 28 years of them. Outside, the cool evening air hit my face like a wake-up call. Jonah wrapped an arm around my shoulders as we walked to the car. "You okay?" he asked. "No," I admitted. "But I will be." My phone buzzed, a text from Delilah. "You've always been so dramatic." "Don't worry, though. I'll make sure everyone knows exactly why you're really canceling your engagement party." I showed the message to Jonah, who read it with a clenched jaw. "She's bluffing," he said, but we both knew better. My sister had always been skilled at spinning narratives that made her the hero and me the villain. "Let her try," I said, surprising myself with how steady my voice sounded. "I'm done playing by their rules." As we drove away from my childhood home, I realized something had shifted. The hurt was still there, but underneath it was something new, something that felt a lot like freedom. The call from Aunt Vivian came while I was reviewing contracts at work. Her voice trembled with that particular brand of family concern that always made my stomach drop. "Marley, sweetheart, I just wanted to check on you. Your mother told me about the situation with Jonah." I sat up straighter in my office chair. "What situation?" "Oh." There was an awkward pause. "Maybe I shouldn't have called. It's just, well, we're all worried about you. Breaking off an engagement is never easy." The pen I'd been holding snapped in my hand, blue ink spreading across my fingers like a bruise. "I'm sorry, what?" "Lillian said you and Jonah had a terrible fight. Something about him being controlling about the wedding plans? And with everything happening with Delilah's promotion, I closed my eyes, counting backward from 10 like my therapist had taught me. It didn't help. Aunt Viv, who exactly has Mom told this to? Well, she hesitated. It came up at Bridge Club yesterday. And I believe she mentioned it at Uncle Robert's birthday dinner last weekend. And of course, she had to explain why she was canceling the engagement party reservations. She what? The words came out as a whisper, but they felt like they were being ripped from my throat. Oh dear. I've upset you. I just thought. Well, your mother seemed so certain. My phone buzzed with another incoming call, Nolan's face flashing on the screen. Aunt Viv, I have to go. But nothing Mom told you is true. Nothing. I switched calls, my hands shaking. Nolan now isn't. Check your email, he cut in. Right now. I pulled up my inbox, finding his message at the top. It contained a forwarded invitation to Delilah's promotion celebration at the Grove. On the 23rd. My date. Keep reading, Nolan said grimly. The invitation mentioned a special announcement from the guest of honor. At the bottom was a personal note from my mother. We're so pleased to be able to use this beautiful venue now that it's available. Sometimes disappointments lead to better opportunities. I'm going to be sick, I muttered. Want me to kill them? I know people. Well, I know people who've watched crime documentaries. A notification popped up on my screen, another email, this time from my cousin Sarah. So sorry to hear about you and Jonah. Mom said Aunt Lillian is devastated. Then another. Thinking of you during this difficult time. And another. If you need someone to talk to about the breakup. My phone buzzed again, a text from Delilah. Sorry, everyone's finding out about your relationship problems, sis. But maybe this is for the best. You've always rushed into things without thinking them through. I stood up so quickly my chair rolled back and hit the wall. Nolan, I have to go. Where are you going? To fix this. I grabbed my purse and headed for the elevator, ignoring the concerned looks from my coworkers. In the parking garage, I called Jonah. Hey, beautiful. How's your? My mother is telling everyone we broke up. A pause. What? She's telling the whole family are controlling, and we had a huge fight, and that's why she's canceling our engagement party. Which, by the way, she's already done, so she can throw Delilah a promotion party instead. The sound of his slow, controlled breathing told me he was as angry as I was. What do you need me to do? Meet me at the Grove in 20 minutes. Bring our contract and deposit receipts. On my way. As I drove, my phone kept buzzing with messages of sympathy and concern. Each one felt like another nail in the coffin of my relationship with my family. But underneath the hurt was something else, something harder and colder that had been building since that day in the bridal shop. My whole life, I'd tried to keep the peace. I'd smiled and stepped aside and swallowed my feelings because that's what good daughters do. But this wasn't just about me anymore. This was about Jonah, about our future, about the family we wanted to build together. My mother had finally gone too far, and she was about to learn that her dramatic daughter had inherited more than just her stubbornness. I'd learned from the best how to wage war, with a smile. The Grove's elegant facade came into view, and I pulled into the parking lot just as Jonah's truck arrived. He got out, holding a folder of documents, his face set in determination. Ready? He asked as I walked up. I took his hand, squeezing it tight. Time to write our own story. I hadn't planned on going to Aunt Vivian's weekly bridge club, but after 3 days of damage control, I needed answers. The familiar scent of her lemon squares and coffee hit me as I slipped in through the side door of her Victorian home, voices drifting from the sunroom. Such a shame about Marlowe, someone was saying. Lillian says the boy has quite a temper. Well, you know how she's always been. Another voice chimed in, Mrs. Peterson, my mother's oldest friend. So desperate for attention. Remember that scene she made at Delilah's graduation? I pressed my back against the wall, my heart pounding. The scene they were referring to was me having an asthma attack during the outdoor ceremony. Lillian's beside herself, Aunt Vivian added, her voice carrying that familiar note of concern. Says Marlowe's been acting erratically ever since Delilah's promotion news. Threatening to go ahead with the engagement party even though the relationship is clearly over. The betrayal hit like a physical blow. Aunt Vivian had always been my safe harbor in family storms. Now she was not just believing my mother's lies, but spreading them. "Did you hear what she did at the Grove, Mrs. Peterson asked, lowering her voice conspiratorially. "Showed up with that poor boy, making a scene about contracts and deposits. Delilah was there planning her celebration and had to witness the whole thing." My hands clenched into fists. I'd gone to the Grove to protect our venue booking, which we'd managed to do, thanks to our ironclad contract. Delilah hadn't been there at all. "Speaking of Delilah," someone else added, "I hear she's bringing someone special to her promotion party. That handsome senior partner she's been seeing." I stepped into the doorway, unable to stay hidden any longer. The room fell silent, 5 pairs of eyes turning to me in shock. "Marley," Aunt Vivian stammered, rising from her chair. "We weren't expecting." "Clearly not," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "You were too busy discussing my failed relationship and unstable behavior." Mrs. Peterson had the grace to look embarrassed, but quickly recovered. "Dear, we're just concerned." "No," I cut her off. "You're just enjoying the show. Let me add to it." I pulled out my phone, scrolling to the photo gallery. Here's Jonah and me yesterday, having dinner with his parents who flew in early for our engagement party. Here's the contract for the Grove, which we still hold. And here's the truth. My mother is lying to all of you because she can't stand that for once something isn't about Delilah. "Marlo," Aunt Vivian started, reaching for me. "Your mother would never."
She already has.
"And you helped her." I turned to face my aunt directly. "You were supposed to be different. You were supposed to be on my side." "I am on your side. We all want what's best for you." "What's best for me?" I laughed, the sound sharp and bitter. "Do you even know what that means anymore? Or do you just automatically assume whatever my mother says must be right?" The room was so quiet you could hear the ticking of Aunt Vivian's antique clock. I looked at these women who'd known me my entire life, who'd watched me grow up in Delilah's shadow, who'd never once questioned the family narrative. You know what?
Keep your concern. Keep your gossip.
Keep believing whatever stories make you feel better about watching a mother systematically tear down one daughter to prop up another. I'm done trying to prove my worth to any of you. As I turned to leave, Mrs. Peterson called out, "Marlo, wait. Perhaps we've been hasty. Save it for Bridge Club next week," I said without turning around. "I'm sure you'll all have plenty to discuss." In my car, I sat gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. My phone buzzed, a text from Delilah. "Heard you made quite a scene at Aunt Viv's." "Again?" "Don't worry, I'll make sure everyone knows you're just stressed about the wedding. You know, the one that's actually happening." The message confirmed what I'd suspected. Delilah had orchestrated this whole thing, feeding information to our mother, who then spread it through her social network like poison. I started the car, a strange calm settling over me. They wanted drama?
Fine.
But this time, I'd write the script. The day before our engagement party, I sat in Jonah's parents' rental house, surrounded by people who actually wanted to celebrate us. The contrast to my own family's absence felt both liberating and crushing. "I still can't believe they're not coming," Sarah, Jonah's sister, said as she helped arrange centerpieces. "What kind of mother misses her daughter's engagement party?" "The kind who's throwing a fake promotion party for her other daughter at the same time," Nolan answered, earning himself a sharp look from Jonah. My phone buzzed, another message from Delilah. "Hope you're ready for tomorrow. Mom's invited practically everyone we know to my party. Guess they all made their choice about which event matters more." "You okay?" Jonah asked quietly, noticing my expression. Before I could answer, his mother Patricia walked in with a stack of photo albums. "Look what I brought. I thought we could display some pictures of you two at the party." As we flipped through the albums, I noticed something that made my throat tight. In every family photo, every holiday snapshot, every casual moment, Jonah's family was actually looking at each other, laughing together. Present. "Oh, this one's perfect," Patricia said, pointing to a picture from last Christmas. "Everyone's smiling at the camera. Except us," Jonah finished grinning. In the photo, we were looking at each other, completely oblivious to the camera. My phone buzzed again. This time it was my father. Your mother's very hurt that you're going through with this. It's not too late to reconsider. I must have made some sort of sound because suddenly everyone was looking at me. That's it, Nolan declared, reaching for my phone. No more family drama until after tomorrow. Wait, I said, pulling up my messages. I need to respond to something first. I opened the family group chat and typed, since there seems to be some confusion about tomorrow's events, I wanted to clarify something. Our engagement party starts at 6 p.m. at the Grove. Anyone who chooses to attend Delilah's party instead is making a clear statement about where they stand. I won't be sending any more invitations after this. Marley, Sarah started, but I wasn't finished. I pulled up the photo I'd been saving. The one of Jonah and me at Christmas, lost in our own world while surrounded by people who loved us. I added it to the group chat with a simple message. This is what real family looks like. Your move. The responses were immediate and predictable. My mother. How dare you make us choose? Delilah. Always have to make everything about you, don't you? My father. You're being unreasonable. I turned off my phone. You know, Patricia said carefully, when I first met you, I wondered why someone so bright and loving seemed so unsure of herself. Now I understand. You've spent your whole life being told you're wrong for taking up space. Mom, Jonah warned, but she continued. No, this needs to be said. Marley, honey, I want you to look at these photos.
Really look at them. Do you know what I see?
I see my son happier than he's ever been. I see someone who fits into this family so naturally that sometimes I forget you haven't always been here. My vision blurred with tears. Tomorrow, she continued, people will make their choices. And those choices will tell you everything you need to know about who deserves to be in your life going forward. Nolan cleared his throat. Speaking of choices, I may have done something slightly devious. We all turned to look at him. I might have created a public Facebook event for Delilah's promotion party. And I might have invited some people from her firm, including her boss. Nolan, I gasped. She doesn't actually have the promotion yet. Exactly. His grin was wicked. Should make for an interesting evening. I should have felt guilty. Should have told him to undo it. Instead, I felt something else. Something that felt dangerously close to satisfaction. Tomorrow's going to be messy, isn't it? Sarah asked. Jonah took my hand, squeezing it gently. Tomorrow's going to be exactly what it needs to be. Looking around at these people, my chosen family, I realized he was right. Whatever happened at the party, I already had everything I needed right here. My phone lit up on the table, Delilah's name flashing on the screen. For the first time in my life, I let it ring. The call came at 3 a.m, 2 days after our engagement party. My mother's voice was sharp enough to cut glass. Are you happy now? She demanded. Is this what you wanted? I sat up in bed, Jonah stirring beside me. What are you talking about? Don't play innocent. Delilah's been suspended pending an ethics investigation. Her boss showed up at her party expecting to announce her promotion, a promotion she hadn't actually received yet. Do you have any idea what you've done? The room felt suddenly cold. Nolan's Facebook event. I hadn't thought. I didn't. She could lose her job, Marlo. Her entire career could be ruined because you couldn't stand someone else having the spotlight for once. My phone buzzed with an incoming text. Delilah, hope you're proud of yourself. Guess destroying my life was worth it to finally be mommy and daddy's center of attention. Another buzz. A group email from my father to the entire extended family. Due to recent unfortunate events caused by ongoing family conflicts, we regret to inform you that we will not be attending Marlo's wedding. We cannot in good conscience celebrate while one daughter deliberately sabotages another. Mom. I tried again, my voice shaking. I never meant. You never mean to do anything, do you? Things just happen around you, and somehow Delilah always ends up hurt. Well, congratulations. You've finally outdone yourself. The line went dead. I stared at my phone as messages started pouring in from relatives. Each one felt like another nail in a coffin I'd apparently built myself. What happened? Jonah asked, fully awake now. Before I could answer, my phone rang again. Nolan. Marley, I'm so sorry, he rushed out. I didn't think it would go this far. I just wanted to cause a little chaos, maybe embarrass her a bit. They're suspending her, I said numbly. There's an ethics investigation. Shit. He paused. But hey, maybe she deserves. Don't. I cut him off. Just don't. I ended the call, walking to the window of our apartment. The city lights blurred through tears I refused to let fall. We can fix this, Jonah said from behind me. Can we? Because from where I'm standing, they're right. I let this happen. I wanted her to hurt like I've hurt. And now, I press my forehead against the cool glass. I've become exactly what they always said I was. The jealous sister. The troublemaker. The one who ruins everything. My phone kept buzzing. Aunt Vivian. I'm disappointed in you, Marlo. I thought you were better than this. Delilah again. Attached is the official suspension notice. Hope it was worth it. By the way, I made sure everyone at work knows exactly who's responsible for this little stunt. This isn't your fault, Jonah insisted. You didn't create that event. But I knew about it. I could have stopped it. Instead, I sat there and felt glad. The admission tasted like ash in my mouth. What kind of person does that make me? He reached for me, but I stepped away. I need some air. Outside, the pre-dawn streets were empty. I walked without direction, my phone continuing its steady stream of accusations and condemnations. Each message painted a clearer picture of who I'd become, someone who'd let revenge poison everything it touched. A final text from my mother. Delilah's in tears. She may lose everything she's worked for. I hope you're satisfied with what your pettiness has accomplished. Don't contact us again. I found myself at the park where Jonah had proposed, sitting on the same bench where I'd once felt like my life was finally coming together. Now, everything was falling apart, and the worst part was knowing I'd helped it happen. My phone lit up one last time. An email from Delilah's firm. They were requesting a meeting with me to discuss my involvement in recent events. I laughed, the sound hollow and broken in the empty park. I'd wanted so badly to stop being the family victim that I'd turned myself into something worse, the villain of their story. And maybe, I realized as the sun began to rise over a day I didn't want to face, they'd been right about me all along. The law firm's conference room felt like an interrogation chamber. I sat across from Delilah's boss and 2 HR representatives, my hands steady despite the storm inside. MS. Grant, the senior partner began. We understand you have information about the incident at your sister's celebration. Before I could respond, the door burst open. Delilah stormed in, our mother right behind her. You don't get to do this, Delilah snarled. You don't get to sit there and play victim after what you did. MS. Grant, the younger Ms. Grant, the HR director interjected. This meeting was meant to be private. No, I said, surprising myself. Let them stay. I think it's time we all heard the truth. Delilah laughed, that sharp, cruel sound I'd grown up dreading. The truth? You mean how you orchestrated this whole thing to ruin my career because you couldn't stand me getting a promotion? You didn't have the promotion, I said quietly. That's the truth you're running from. I was going to get it. Richard practically promised. I didn't create that Facebook event. I cut in, turning to the senior partner. But I did bring something else. I pulled out my phone, playing the voice message Delilah had left me last week. You think you're so special with your perfect engagement and your perfect fiancé? I told Richard the first already had the promotion. I told everyone, because I knew once I announced it, they'd have to give it to me. They always give me what I want. The room went deadly quiet. You recorded me? Delilah whispered.
No.
You recorded yourself. Every threatening message, every admission, every lie, you documented it all. I just saved them. Marlo, my mother warned, but I wasn't finished. I also have the texts where you admitted to spreading rumors about my engagement being called off. The ones where you threatened to make me pay for not canceling my party. Would you like me to share those too? Delilah's face had gone white. You're lying. Am I? I turned back to the senior partner. I came here today because I wanted you to know something. I didn't expose Delilah's lie about the promotion. She did that herself, by throwing a celebration for something she hadn't earned. By trying so hard to hurt me, she ended up hurting herself. This is ridiculous, my mother interjected. Delilah would never. Check her work emails, I said to the HR director. Check the dates. She started telling clients about her promotion weeks ago, making promises she couldn't keep, taking meetings she wasn't authorized to take. Delilah lunged across the table, but security was faster. As they escorted her out, she screamed, "You've always been jealous, always trying to take what's mine." "No," I said, standing. "I just stopped letting you take what's mine." My mother followed me into the hallway. "How dare you do this to your sister?" "I didn't do anything to her. I just stopped protecting her from the consequences of her own actions." "And yours?" "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I'm done, Mom. Done being the family's scapegoat. Done watching you enable her worst behavior. Done pretending we're a normal family when we're anything but." "So, this is your revenge? Destroying your sister's career?"
No.
"This is me finally telling the truth. Delilah destroyed her own career. You destroyed our family. And I'm finally free of both of you." As I walked away, Delilah's voice echoed down the hallway. "You'll regret this. I'll make sure you regret this." But for the first time in my life, her threats felt empty. I stepped into the sunshine, where Jonah was waiting by the car. "How did it go?" I took a deep breath, letting it out slowly. It went exactly how it needed to. My phone buzzed a message from Nolan. "Just heard what happened. You okay?" I typed back. "Better than okay. I'm free." Behind us, I could hear my mother and sister's voices, still shouting, still trying to spin the narrative their way. But their words couldn't touch me anymore. I had finally written my own ending to their story, and it felt like victory. My wedding day arrived with the kind of perfect autumn sunshine that feels like a gift. Standing in front of the mirror in my dress, I noticed something different about my reflection. The woman looking back wasn't searching for approval anymore. "Ready?" Nolan asked, adjusting his bow tie. As my man of honor, he'd taken his duties seriously, including intercepting 3 separate attempts by my mother to contact me in the past week. Almost. I touched the empty space where my mother's pearls should have been, the ones she'd promised to every bride in our family. Instead, I wore Patricia's sapphire earrings, something borrowed that felt more like something found. The ceremony space at the Grove looked nothing like Delilah's failed party 6 months ago. Jonah's family filled the front rows, along with friends who'd stood by us through everything. The empty seats on my side told their own story, but somehow they didn't hurt anymore. As I walked down the aisle alone, my father's text declining to attend had been brief and final. I caught glimpses of familiar faces. Aunt Vivian, who'd shown up this morning with tears and apologies, sat quietly in the back. A few cousins who'd chosen to hear my side of the story. Even my mother's best friend, Mrs. Peterson, who'd surprised everyone by publicly defending me after the truth about Delilah's lies came out. Jonah waited at the altar, and the look in his eyes made everything else fade away. During the reception, Nolan clinked his glass for the toast. When Marley first told me about Jonah, she said something I'll never forget. She said, "He sees me. Not the version of her that her family wanted, not the shadow of her sister, just her." Today, we're all seeing the real Marley, strong, loving, and finally, wonderfully free. Later, during our first dance, Jonah whispered, "Any regrets?" I thought about the cost of standing up for myself. Delilah had left the firm, her reputation in tatters. My mother hadn't spoken to me since the confrontation. Family gatherings would forever have a before and after, marked by my decision to stop playing my assigned role. "No," I said honestly. "Just clarity." As the night wound down, Sarah handed me an envelope that had been dropped off at the front desk. I recognized Delilah's handwriting immediately. "You don't have to read it," Jonah said quietly. But I did. Because that's the thing about family. Even when you break free, the threads still tug. "Dear Marley," it began. "I'm starting therapy. Real therapy, not the kind Mom always pushed to fix what she saw as problems. I'm learning about narcissistic family dynamics and golden child syndrome. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it yet. But I am asking for you to know that I see it now. All of it. What they did to you. What I did to you. What we all did to ourselves. Maybe someday we can talk about it. If not, I understand. Be happy, sister. You deserve it. I folded the letter carefully, tucking it into my wedding album, not as an invitation back into the chaos, but as a reminder of how far I'd come. Dance with me? Nolan appeared, holding out his hand. Your husband's busy teaching your new niece how to dab, and it's getting embarrassing. As we swayed to the music, I caught sight of my reflection in the venue's windows. The same autumn sunshine that had greeted me this morning was setting now, painting everything in shades of gold and possibility. You know, Nolan said, following my gaze, revenge stories usually end with someone winning and someone losing. But this feels different. Because it's not about winning anymore, I realized. It's about choosing yourself. Later that night, as Jonah and I left for our honeymoon, my phone lit up with one final message from my father. Your mother may never understand, but I do. Be happy, Marlo. Be free. I turned off my phone without responding. Some doors needed to stay closed, at least for now. But others were opening, and through them, I could see a future where I wasn't defined by who I'd left behind, but by who I'd chosen to become. And that felt like the happiest ending of all. I stared at my phone, reading the text message for the 5th time, my hands trembling slightly. I know what you're hiding, Marin. We should talk before Everett finds out. My mother-in-law's words glowed accusingly on the screen. My name is Marin, and until 5 minutes ago, I thought the worst thing about my relationship with my mother-in-law was her constant reminders about my food allergies. You know, the subtle jabs about how complicated I make family dinners, or how Everett's ex-girlfriend Camille could eat anything without making a fuss. I was standing in our kitchen, the morning sun streaming through the windows, when the message arrived. The coffee I'd been sipping turned bitter in my mouth. What could Lorna possibly think she knew about me? I'd always been an open book, sometimes to a fault. Hey, beautiful. Everett's voice made me jump. I quickly locked my phone and set it face down on the counter. He wrapped his arms around my waist from behind, and I forced myself to relax into his embrace. You okay? You seem tense. Just your mom being? Your mom, I said, trying to keep my voice light. She wants to talk. Everett's arms stiffened slightly. What about? She didn't say. The lie felt heavy on my tongue, but I needed time to figure this out. Probably another lecture about cross-contamination in her kitchen. He sighed, his breath warm against my neck. I'll talk to her again about the allergy thing. She needs to understand it's not a choice you're making to be difficult. If only that were the real issue. I turned in his arms, studying his face, the kind eyes, the slight worry line between his brows that appeared whenever his mother came up in conversation. Remember when we first started dating, and you told me your mom was a bit protective? He laughed. Understatement of the century? Just a bit. I managed to smile, but my mind was racing. What could Lorna possibly think she had on me? I never cheated, never lied about anything important. The only secret I kept was, but no, she couldn't know about that.
Nobody knew about that.
My phone buzzed again. Everett reached for it, but I snatched it first. Sorry, probably work, I said, stepping away. His expression flickered with confusion at my sudden movement. Another message from Lorna. I'm coming over this afternoon. We can discuss the photo I found while cleaning out the attic. My blood ran cold. The attic, where Walter, my father-in-law, had stored boxes of old family photos, including ones from before I met Everett. Before I changed my name. Before I became the person I am today. I need to run some errands, I said quickly, already grabbing my purse. I'll pick up dinner on my way home? Marin? Everett's voice stopped me at the door. You tell me if something was really wrong, right? I looked back at my husband, the man who'd loved me unconditionally for the past 5 years, who'd chosen me despite his mother's constant comparisons to perfect Camille, who didn't know that the woman he married had reinvented herself long before we met. Of course, I lied again, hating myself for it. Everything's fine. As I drove away, my phone kept buzzing with messages I couldn't bear to read. Lorna had finally found the ammunition she'd been looking for since the day Everett brought me home. The question was, what would she do with it? The truth about my past wasn't just my secret to keep, it was my survival story. And I'd be damned if I'd let Lorna twist it into something ugly. But first, I needed to know exactly what she'd found in that attic. I pulled into Lorna and Walter's driveway, my heart pounding against my ribs. The familiar colonial house loomed before me, its pristine white exterior masking the tension that always lurked inside. I'd driven here instead of running errands, knowing I needed to face this head-on. Walter's truck wasn't in the driveway, small mercies. At least I'd only have to deal with Lorna. Before I could reach the front door, it swung open. Lorna stood there in her perfectly pressed slacks and cashmere sweater, a manila envelope in her hands. "I wasn't expecting you so soon," she said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "But I'm glad you came." The formal living room felt cold despite the summer heat outside. Family photos lined the walls, dozens of them tracking Everett's life. I noticed, not for the first time, how many included Camille. 8 years of dating captured in frozen moments, while my 5 years of marriage warranted only 2 frames. "Would you like some tea?" Lorna asked, already moving toward the kitchen. "I bought those special allergen-free cookies you can eat. Though I suppose that was unnecessary, wasn't it?" My stomach clenched. "What exactly do you think you know, Lorna?" She set the envelope on the coffee table between us. "I was cleaning the attic last weekend. Walter's been after me for months to organize all those old boxes." She paused, studying my face. "I found something interesting in his old case files. Walter's career as a private investigator. Of course. I should have known he'd have access to that kind of information. Whatever you found." "Sarah Mitchell," Lorna said quietly, and my world tilted. "That was your name before, wasn't it? Before you became Maren Collins." I heard voices in the foyer, Walter's deep rumble and, to my horror, Everett's familiar tone. My hands started shaking. "Mom," Everett called out. "Your car's not in the garage," but the door was open. He stopped short in the living room doorway, Walter right behind him. "Maren, what are you doing here?" "Perfect timing," Lorna said, reaching for the envelope. "We were just about to look at some interesting photographs." Walter stepped forward, his face darkening. "Lorna, don't. She's been lying to our son for years, Walter. He deserves to know who he really married." "Mom, what are you talking about?" Everett moved to stand beside my chair, his hand resting protectively on my shoulder. I stood up, shrugging off his touch. "I can explain." "Can you?" Lorna pulled out a newspaper clipping. "Can you explain why Sarah Mitchell disappeared 10 years ago, right after her father's arrest for running a Ponzi scheme that ruined hundreds of lives? Or why she emerged 3 years later as Maren Collins, with a convenient list of life-threatening allergies that make her seem so fragile and in need of protection?" "That's enough," Walter snapped, but the damage was done. Everett stared at me, his face unreadable. "Maren, I changed my name legally," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "I didn't do anything wrong. My father did terrible things, yes, but I helped the investigation. I'm the one who turned him in." "After taking your share?" Lorna pressed. "The money that disappeared with Sarah Mitchell was returned to the victims," Walter cut in. "All of it. I know because I worked the case." He turned to his wife, disgust evident in his expression. "Which you knew when you found my files. You just chose to leave that part out." The silence that followed was deafening. Everett hadn't moved, hadn't spoken. I couldn't bear to look at him. "I think," Walter said quietly, "you should leave, Lorna.
Take a drive.
Think about what you're doing to this family." "I'm protecting this family," she insisted, but her voice wavered. "No." Everett finally spoke, his tone ice cold. "You're destroying it. And if you ever try to hurt Maren again, you'll lose me too." I felt his hand slip into mine, warm and steady. But as we walked out together, leaving Lorna standing alone in her perfect living room, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. She'd exposed my past, yes, but she didn't know everything. And the part she didn't know? Those were the ones that could really tear this family apart. The next morning, I found Walter sitting alone at the local diner, nursing a cup of coffee. He didn't seem surprised when I slid into the booth across from him. The breakfast crowd's chatter provided a buffer of white noise around us, making it feel safer to talk. "You knew," I said quietly. "All this time, you knew who I was." He pushed a manila folder across the table, different from the one Lorna had yesterday. "I kept copies of everything. Figured this day might come." He paused as the waitress refilled his cup. "What Lorna doesn't know is that I've been watching her, too." I opened the folder and froze. Inside was a photo of Lorna having lunch with Camille, dated just last week. "She's still in contact with her?" "More than that." Walter's face was grim. "They've been plotting. Lorna's been feeding Camille information about your marriage, your medical conditions. They're trying to prove your allergies are fake." My hands started trembling. "Why are you showing me this?" "Because my wife is about to do something stupid." He pulled out another document. "She's hired a private investigator, not me, obviously, to dig deeper into your past. But she's not going to find what she thinks she will, is she?" I stared at my reflection in the window, remembering the scared 19-year-old girl who discovered her father's crimes.
No.
"She won't." "The money that disappeared?" Walter's voice was gentle. "The part she thinks you stole? I know where it really went. I know what you did with it." "You never told her?" "Wasn't my story to tell." He leaned forward. "But maybe it's time you did. Before she does more damage trying to protect Everett from a threat that doesn't exist." My phone buzzed, a text from Everett. "Mom just showed up at the house. Says she needs to talk to both of us." "Where are you?" "She's moving faster than I thought," Walter muttered, reading the message over my shoulder. "Marin, listen to me. Lorna's not just afraid of losing Everett. She's afraid of losing her identity as his protector. After what happened with Camille." "What had happened with Camille?" I asked. "Everyone tiptoes around it, but nobody ever tells me the whole story." Walter's expression darkened. "Camille nearly bankrupted Everett. Convinced him to invest in her brother's business venture. It was a scam, but she claims she didn't know. Lorna had to remortgage their house to help him recover. That's why she's so paranoid about me being another con artist." I laughed bitterly. "Ironic, considering my background. The difference is you exposed the con. You didn't profit from it." He pulled out one final document, a newspaper article I'd never seen before. It detailed how an anonymous source had helped return millions to the victims of my father's scheme. "You gave up your inheritance to make things right."
My phone buzzed again.
"Everett, Mom's saying something about proof. Please come home." I stood up, gathering the documents. "I need to go." "Marin." Walter caught my arm. "There's something else you should know. About why Lorna's so fixated on Camille." He hesitated. "Camille's pregnant. And she's claiming it's Everett's." The world tilted sideways. "That's impossible. They haven't been together in years." "I know. But Lorna wants to believe it. Because if it's true, then she has a reason to push me out completely." I felt oddly calm, despite the bomb that had just been dropped. "When did Camille tell her this?" "Yesterday morning, right before Lorna found my old case files about you." He gave me a meaningful look. "Convenient timing, wouldn't you say?" I thought about the pregnancy test hidden in my bathroom drawer, the one I'd been too afraid to take. About how everything was about to get infinitely more complicated. "Thank you, Walter," I said, already heading for the door, "for showing me what I'm really up against." "What are you going to do?" I paused, thinking about the other secrets I'd been keeping. The ones that could either save my marriage or destroy it completely. "I'm going to tell my husband the whole truth, before his mother and ex-girlfriend can twist it into something else." I sat in my car outside our house, staring at the pregnancy test I'd finally taken in the diner's bathroom. 2 pink lines.
Clear as day.
The irony of this timing wasn't lost on me, my news versus Camille's claim. But first, I had to deal with whatever scene was waiting inside. Lorna's Mercedes was parked in our driveway, looking as pristine and polished as its owner always did. Through the living room window, I could see her gesturing animatedly while Everett sat with his head in his hands. The moment I walked in, Lorna's voice cut through the tension. Finally. Now we can discuss Camille's situation like adults. There is no situation, Everett said, standing up. Camille and I haven't been together in years. This is ridiculous. She says differently. Lorna pulled out her phone. She has proof of a meeting 3 months ago. My hand instinctively went to my stomach, but I forced it back down. Let me guess, at the Cardinal Hotel bar? They both turned to look at me. Everett's face showed confusion, Lorna's triumph. How did you know that? She asked. I pulled out my own phone, finding the photo Walter had given me. Because I know about your weekly lunches with Camille. I know you've been plotting this together. I turned to Everett. 3 months ago, your mother arranged for Camille to accidentally run into you at that bar. But you never showed up, did you? I was with you, he said slowly. We were at the hospital. Your allergic reaction to the new medication, which your mother knew about, I added. She knew exactly where you'd be that night. Just like she knows my entire medical history now, thanks to the private investigator she hired. Lorna's face paled slightly. How did you? Walter told me everything. I placed the folder of documents on the coffee table, including what really happened with Camille and the investment scam. That's not relevant, Lorna snapped. It's completely relevant. I took a deep breath. Because you're so afraid of history repeating itself that you can't see what's really happening. Camille's lying about the pregnancy, Lorna. Just like she lied about not knowing her brother's business was a scam. Everett picked up the folder, his hands shaking slightly as he read. Mom, you've been meeting with her this whole time? Planning this? I was protecting you. No, he said quietly. You were trying to control me. Again. He looked up at me. What else haven't you told me? This was it. The moment to lay everything bare. Remember how I said I turned my father in? What I didn't tell you is why. I pulled out the final document Walter had given me. The money everyone thought I stole? I used it to repay his victims. All of it. Every penny I inherited, every asset I had. That's why I changed my name, not to hide, but to start over with nothing. Lorna grabbed the paper, her eyes widening as she read. This can't be. Your investigator won't find any hidden accounts or secret wealth, I continued. But he might find the thank you letters from the families I helped, or the testimony I gave that put my father away. I paused, my hand finally resting on my stomach. And now I need to protect my own family. Everett's eyes followed my movement, realization dawning on his face. Marin, I found out this morning, I said softly. Our baby deserves better than this endless suspicion and manipulation. So you need to choose, Everett. Both of you do. Lorna sank into the chair, the paper crumpling in her hands. You're pregnant.
Yes.
And unlike Camille's convenient claim, I can prove it. I turned to my husband. I love you, but I won't raise our child in this environment. Your mother needs help, Everett. Real help. Not enabling. The silence that followed was deafening. Outside, a car door slammed and Walter's voice called out. Lorna? Are you ready to tell them the real reason you're so desperate to keep Everett close? I watched the color drain from my mother-in-law's face, and I realized we were about to uncover yet another layer of this family's carefully constructed facade. Whatever came next would either heal us or break us completely. But at least now, with my own secret revealed, I could face it honestly for my child's sake, if nothing else. Walter's words hung in the air as he entered our living room. The tension was thick enough to choke on, but Lorna's face, that's what caught my attention. Pure fear, something I'd never seen from her before. Don't, she whispered to Walter.
Please.
The pregnancy dinner is tomorrow, Walter said, ignoring her plea. Were you planning to serve that special cake you ordered? The one with the almond flour? My blood ran cold. Everett stepped forward. Mom, it's a family recipe, Lorna said quickly. I wanted to make something traditional to celebrate. To celebrate? Walter pulled out a receipt. Like you celebrated when you ordered that cake for Marin's birthday last year? The one that mysteriously got mixed up with a nut-free version at the last minute. I remembered that day, how Lorna had seemed almost disappointed when I didn't take a bite. How she'd insisted it was safe, but Walter had intercepted the plate. You knew about my allergies, I said softly. You knew exactly what almond flour would do to me. And now, Walter continued, with a grandchild on the way, were you hoping to prove Marin's allergies were fake? Or were you hoping for something worse? Everett's face had gone pale. Dad, what are you saying? I'm saying your mother has been testing Marin's allergies for years. Small doses, watching for reactions. Like some twisted scientific experiment. The room started spinning. All those times I'd felt sick after family dinners, the mysterious reactions that didn't make sense. I had to know. Lorna burst out. Had to prove she was lying like everything else about her. You don't understand. I can't lose him again. Again? Everett's voice cracked. What are you talking about? Walter moved to stand beside his wife. Tell him, Lorna. Tell him about the baby you lost before Everett. About how it broke you so badly you couldn't bear the thought of losing another child. I watched understanding dawn on Everett's face. The brother you told me died of SIDS. That wasn't the whole story, was it? Lorna's composure crumbled. I was allergic to the medication they gave me during the pregnancy. The doctors didn't believe me when I said something was wrong. By the time they listened, she turned to me, her eyes wild. When Everett brought home another woman with mysterious allergies, claiming she needed special treatment, special care. You thought I was faking, I finished. Like you thought the doctors thought you were faking. I had to protect him. By poisoning his wife. Walter's voice was harsh. By trying to prove she's lying, even if it killed her. The doorbell rang, making us all jump. Through the window, I saw Camille standing on our porch, one hand resting demonstratively on her stomach. Perfect timing, I said, feeling strangely calm. Should we invite her in? Let her explain how she's supposedly carrying your child, Everett? Or should we skip straight to the part where your mother orchestrated this whole thing?
No.
Everett moved to block the door. No more manipulation. No more lies. He turned to his mother. You need help, Mom. Real help. Not whatever this is. I'm trying to save you. You're trying to control me. And now you're trying to hurt my wife, my pregnant wife, to prove some twisted point.
He pulled out his phone.
I'm calling Dr. Richards. The same psychiatrist who helped you after James died. Either you agree to get help or what? Lorna's voice was barely a whisper. Or you'll never meet your grandchild. The words seemed to physically pain him. Your real grandchild. The doorbell rang again. Outside, Camille was peering through the window, her face falling as she took in the scene. I placed a hand on my stomach, thinking about cycles of pain and protection, about how fear can twist love into something dangerous. The cake, I said quietly. The one for tomorrow's dinner. Where is it? Lorna's silence was answer enough. Because I'm thinking, I continued, my voice steady despite my racing heart, that we should all have a slice. Together.
Right now.
And see who's really telling the truth about what's inside it. The cake sat in the middle of the dining room table like a bomb waiting to detonate. Lorna had retrieved it from her car, her hands shaking as she set it down. Camille still stood in the doorway, her fabricated pregnancy story forgotten in the tension of the moment. You first, Lorna, I said, cutting a slice. Show us how safe your family recipe is. This is ridiculous, she whispered, but I saw the fear in her eyes. Is it? Because I have my EpiPen right here. I placed it next to the plate. And I've already texted photos of this whole situation to my lawyer. So, if anything happens to me, I let the threat hang in the air. Everett grabbed my arm.
Madam, stop.
You're pregnant. We can't risk. Can't risk what? I pulled away from him. Can't risk proving that your mother has been slowly poisoning me for years? That she was planning to do it again, even knowing I'm carrying your child. I never meant to, Lorna started.
To what?
Kill me? Just make me sick enough to prove I'm lying? My voice cracked. Do you know what it feels like, Lorna? When your throat closes up. When you can't breathe, and every second feels like drowning? Walter stepped forward. I have the receipt from the bakery. The order specifically requested almond flour. Stop. Lorna's voice was barely audible. Please, just stop.
Why?
I picked up the knife again. Isn't this what you wanted? To expose the truth. Camille cleared her throat from the doorway. I should go.
No.
I pointed the knife at her. You're part of this too. The fake pregnancy story? That was supposed to be the backup plan, wasn't it? If the cake didn't work? I needed the money, Camille admitted quietly. Lorna said. Enough. Everett's shout made us all jump. This ends now. Mom, eat the cake. Lorna stared at her son, tears streaming down her face. I lost one son. I couldn't lose another. So, you tried to kill my wife instead? I just wanted proof. She grabbed the fork, hands trembling.
Fine.
I'll show you. Everything happened in slow motion. Lorna lifted the fork to her mouth, but her hand was shaking so badly that crumbs fell onto her blouse. As she swallowed, her eyes went wide. Mom, Everett stepped toward her. Lorna's hand went to her throat. I can't breathe. Walter rushed to her side. Lorna, what's wrong? The medication, she gasped. My allergy to the new heart medication. My EpiPen clattered to the floor as realization hit. The same allergies she'd accused me of faking, she had them too. Different trigger, same result. Call 911, Walter shouted, lowering Lorna to the floor as she struggled for breath. I grabbed my EpiPen and knelt beside her. This will help, but it's going to hurt. Our eyes met, and in that moment, I saw everything. The fear, the guilt, the desperate need to protect what she loved, even if it meant destroying it. I saw myself in a twisted way. How thin the line was between protection and destruction. The EpiPen clicked as I pressed it into her thigh. Lorna's body jerked, her hand gripping mine with surprising strength. I'm sorry, she whispered as the medication took effect. I'm so sorry. Sirens wailed in the distance. Camille had disappeared, leaving the front door open. Everett stood frozen, watching his mother fight for breath on the floor, saved by the very person she'd tried to harm. The baby, Lorna gasped. Will you ever let me? That depends, I said, still holding her hand as the paramedics rushed in. On whether you get help, real help. As they loaded Lorna into the ambulance, I stared at the cake still sitting on the table. One bite had almost killed her. One bite would have killed me. The ultimate proof of truth, delivered in the cruelest way possible. Walter turned to me, his face aged 10 years in the last hour. Why did you save her? Because, I said, watching the ambulance drive away, sometimes the best revenge is forcing someone to live with what they've done. 3 days after the cake incident, I found myself sitting across from Lorna in the hospital's psychiatric ward. The room was stark white, making her look smaller, older somehow. The bruise from the EpiPen injection was still visible on her thigh. Walter's leaving me, she said without preamble. Her voice was raw, whether from the allergic reaction or crying, I couldn't tell. He's already packed his things. I placed my hand on my stomach, feeling the slight swell that only I could detect so far. Did you ever actually check the ingredients in that cake? Or did you just assume I was lying about my allergies, like you assumed everything else? She flinched. I was so sure that I was manipulating Everett, using my allergies to control him. I leaned forward. The way you used your grief over James to control your family? You don't understand what it's like to lose a child. No, but I understand what it's like to lose everything else. I pulled out an old photograph, me as Sarah Mitchell, standing next to my father at a charity gala. When I turned him in, I lost my name, my family, my entire identity. But I did it because it was right. Lorna's hands trembled as she took the photo. Why are you here, Marin? Because I need to know if you're capable of change. Real change. Not just for Everett's sake, or this baby's, but for yourself. A nurse appeared in the doorway with medication, but Lorna waved her away. I don't deserve another chance. Maybe not, but this isn't about what you deserve. I stood up, moving to leave. It's about breaking the cycle. Wait. Her voice cracked. There's something else you need to know. About James. About what really happened. I sat back down slowly, watching her face crumple. The allergic reaction? It wasn't just the medication. I'd been taking risks, eating things I shouldn't, trying to prove I wasn't really allergic, that the doctors were wrong. She wrapped her arms around herself. When I got pregnant, I kept doing it, kept testing my limits, until understanding dawned, horrible and clear. You blamed yourself for James's death. And then Everett brought you home, with your careful food checks and medical alerts, and all I could see was myself. My weakness. The same weakness that killed my baby. Tears streamed down her face. I had to prove you were faking. Had to prove it wasn't real. Because if your allergies were real, then you'd have to accept that yours were too. I finished. That James's death wasn't because you were weak, but because no one believed you. A sound from the doorway made us both turn. Everett stood there, his face ashen. Mom, how long have you been there? Lorna whispered. Long enough. He moved into the room, standing between us. Why didn't you ever tell me the truth about James? Because I killed him. My pride, my stupidity. No. I cut in sharply. The doctors killed him when they dismissed your symptoms. The same way you tried to dismiss mine. Silence filled a room, heavy with decades of unspoken pain. Finally, Everett spoke. I'm staying with Marin at her house. Walter's moving in with his brother. He paused, choosing his words carefully. But there's a treatment program in Vermont. 6 months, specialized in trauma and anxiety. They have experience with patients who have severe allergies. Lorna's eyes darted between us. You'd let me come back? After everything? Not come back, I said firmly. Start over. But only if you do the work. Only if you face what really happened with James and what you tried to do to me. And the baby? I touched my stomach again. Will know their grandmother when she's ready to be known. Really known, not hidden behind walls of control and fear. As we left the hospital, Everett took my hand. You're either the most forgiving person I've ever met or the most strategic. I thought about cycles of pain, about how revenge and healing sometimes look remarkably similar. Maybe both, I said. Maybe that's what breaking the cycle takes. Behind us, through the hospital window, I could see Lorna watching us leave, one hand pressed against the glass. This time, when she reached for her medication, she didn't wave the nurse away. 6 months later, I stood in front of the mirror, smoothing my dress over my now visible baby bump. The Vermont Treatment Center had called yesterday. Lorna was completing her program, and they wanted to arrange a supervised family session. Ready? Everett asked from the doorway. In his hands was a small box we'd received that morning from Lorna. I nodded, and he opened it. Inside was a leather-bound journal and a note. I found this in my mother's attic. It explains so much, maybe too much. The journal belonged to Lorna's mother, detailing her own struggles with control and fear. The last entry, dated just before her death, was an unfinished letter to Lorna. My darling daughter, I'm sorry for teaching you that love means control, for making you believe that protecting someone means owning them. She's breaking the cycle, I said quietly, touching the worn pages. Really breaking it. Walter met us at the treatment center, looking years younger despite the divorce proceedings. She's different, he said as we walked in. Really different. The family session room was bright, with comfortable chairs arranged in a circle. Lorna sat already waiting, her hands folded in her lap. The first thing I noticed was her medical alert bracelet, identical to mine. I've been baking, she said after we settled in the center's kitchen. They have protocols for allergen safety. She smiled slightly. Turns out I'm quite good at it when I'm not trying to prove something. Mom. Everett started, but she held up her hand. Let me finish. I've learned something important here. She took a deep breath. Control isn't protection. What I did, to James, to you, Marin, to this family, it wasn't about keeping anyone safe. It was about not feeling powerless. The therapist nodded encouragingly, and Lorna continued. I found these in my mother's things. She pulled out a stack of letters. She did the same things to me that I did to you, Everett. Made me doubt myself. Used my weaknesses against me. Called it love. Her voice cracked. But it's not love. It's fear. I touched my stomach as the baby kicked. Lorna's eyes followed the movement. I'd like to be part of your child's life, she said softly. Not as the controlling grandmother who needs to fix everything, but as someone who understands what it means to be different. To need protection sometimes, but not control. We'd like that, I said, surprising myself with how much I meant it. But we need to know this change is real. It is. She pulled out another letter, newer. I wrote to Camille's brother. He's agreed to repay Everett what he lost in the investment scam. It won't fix what I did, using Camille to hurt you both, but it's a start, Everett finished. After the session, as we walked through the center's garden, I found myself alone with Lorna. She stopped by a bench, touching the medical alert bracelet. You know what the hardest part was? She asked. Accepting that you and I are more alike than different. Both of us changed our names, running from our past. Both of us living with invisible threats. Both of us. Survivors, I finished. Not victims. She nodded, tears in her eyes. I named him James because it means supplanter, someone who takes another's place. I was so afraid of being replaced, I nearly destroyed everything trying to prevent it. I took her hand, placing it on my stomach where the baby was kicking. This little one? We're naming her Hope. Later that night, as Everett and I lay in bed, he asked, "Do you really trust her change?" I thought about the journal, about cycles of fear and control, about how healing sometimes requires walking through the darkest parts of ourselves. I trust that she's trying, I said finally, and sometimes that's the bravest thing we can do. On our nightstand sat the last page of Lorna's mother's letter, its final lines hauntingly familiar. The greatest act of love isn't holding on. It's learning when to let go. The baby kicked again, and I smiled, thinking about names and changes and the future we were building, not despite our scars, but because of them. Some cycles, it turns out, are meant to be broken.